position. Change now, we go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action is go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in, this has all got trouble written all over it. This is these 3 cars.
From downhill, they head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line. Yes, he did. Through he goes.
And good morning everyone, or rather good afternoon, depending on where you are, and of course good night to Simeon, who's already in the chat, our favorite Australian. And hello from Suzuka for the second round of the AOR Endurance Championship Season 3 for the 8-hour race in Japan. We are looking forward to what will be a fantastic race, full grid, 50 cars, all sorts of ability levels on track today. And with me in the booth today is Jon.
Yeah, very happy to be here in the comms box again, buddy. Nice to be in the comms box with you as well. It's been a while since we've done some things together. A little bit battered and bruised with illness, much like the rest of Europe, unfortunately, at the moment. But yeah, we had a fantastic Super Bowl session 90 minutes ago. With all of that going on. It was the Racing Anywhere SimSport car that took honours in that. So yeah, looking very much forward to seeing what all of these guys get up to for 8 hours of racing. Obviously a lot can change in the order, a lot of things can happen, and a lot of action for us to look forward to. So I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, Suzuka, I think, pretty much one of the favorite tracks of basically everyone. Classic track, lots of overtaking opportunities, lots of difficult corners, and also compared to Paul Ricard a few weeks ago, lots of opportunities to overcook it, to find yourself on some gravel trap or in some wall. So that will be a big changeover compared to the last round for those of us who were with us in France. You commented on the Super Pole today. We already saw 2 of the Super Pole competitors invalidating their lap due to track limits. Do you think it will be a big problem today in the race as well?
I think it could be very problematic. It's, 8 hours is a long time, and when admittedly, obviously that 8-hour period is broken up between multiple drivers doing individual stints and things like that, but the level of concentration that you have to maintain around here as the drivers pull away for the start of the formation lap, it's so easy just to overstep the mark ever so slightly. Main crunch points are going to be around the exit of turn 9, the second Degner, potentially on that kind of middle part of the spoon curve between 13 and 14, on the exit of 14 as well. That's a very tricky area, and then the exit of 130R. They're going to be the biggest crunch points in terms of where these track limit warnings can occur. I think there is also a chance that maybe if you cut too aggressively over Casio Triangle, you can get a track limit warning there, but it's not quite as much of an inviting cut, because it does tend to upset the car quite substantially, particularly things like the Ferraris and McLaren and stuff like that don't like being sent over the curves quite that heavily. So yeah, there's definitely going to be, I imagine, a few drive-through penalties, unfortunately, for some of these guys, and they're really going to have to try super hard to concentrate during all of their stints, through the maybe changing conditions, battling with other cars and things like that as well, to try to avoid getting any drive-throughs, because whilst this pit lane probably is one of the shorter ones, I'm tempted to say, relative to things like Spa, of course, which is a complete catastrophe if you get a drive-through there, it's definitely still going to be costly, and whilst you may have 8 hours to try to recover that time, still, a drive-through penalty is a big killer when it comes to your race performance, so definitely likely to be a problem for some drivers and something that they will be looking to keep an eye on.
So, as the grid makes its way towards the start-finish line, let's just quickly go through the top 10 today, for those of you who weren't with us for the Super Pro session. In P1 from pole position today, starting Vincent Erbrich from Race Anywhere. Behind him we have the Aston Martin, the sole Aston Martin in the top 10. No, actually two Aston Martins in the otherwise very German-dominated top 10. That's Leonardo Porco from Virtual Racing Team. We have Marcin Olejats from URL. Then the first SPQR Racing Team, that's Matteo Scinotti from the 202 car. Merman in the MSR Racing BMW. We have another BMW of Paul Scheben from Garage 991. Orlando Retz from Rennwelten Esports. Then we have Mark Gewinner from Lightpad Esports in P8. And then the other two SPQR Racing teams of Matteo Marano and Giuseppe Dana in BMW and Audi respectively.
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting Super Bowl session that we had, and yeah, that 49 Audi coming out on top. But one thing we kind of discussed a little bit in that Super Bowl session was, you know, what are the effects of tyre wear and things like that going to be about the changing conditions? The Audi maybe not the strongest car to be so adaptable, and that's where the number 3 of Leonardo Porco at the moment, that Aston Martin, the BMWs as well, may start to come into play and become a bit stronger, because also track temperature is significantly higher than it was in the qualifying session. If I'm not mistaken, it was 22 degrees previously, now it's up at 33. So, you know, the track temperature's got a lot hotter. That's going to increase the tyre degradation aspects for all of these guys, and perhaps if you're in some of these mid-engine cars, that might be more problematic. So it's going to be a very interesting 8 hours without doubt.
And 8 hours starting any moment now. Leading driver Erbrich making his way to the start-finish line, which I think is the start line quite early on the straight here. But prepared for me to call it wrongly. I think it was actually the other way around. It's quite late on in the main straight.
It's surprisingly late. We had the same thing in Super Bowl.
And now we go for the 8 hours of Suzuka. Vincent Erbrich getting away well, seemingly.
Oh no!
There's already a crash in the background.
Olejats, number 7 car.
That was the number 7 of Olejats on the grid. There's a few more cars in the back spinning around. We'll try to update you on who that was as soon as we know. I think that was the 2-2 of Scinotti, who, no, he's still on track but lost quite a few positions, already down in 7th. So is the 991 car losing a position. Merman and Retz, however, gaining. Vincent Erbrich, Leonardo Porco getting away well still in P1 and P2. Didn't lose any positions there on the start. Not quite sure who that was, who we saw crashing at the start. I think that was also the 729 Honda car.
Yeah, I'm just having a look back on the replay now. It was quite an aggressive opening sequence between the Aston Martin of Porco, who had a poor start. Olejats was right up behind, switched over to the left, and then it was one of the SPQ Racing Team Audis that then that BMW got struck across the nose of, and then the 125 Honda unfortunately ran into the back of that BMW. I'm just trying to work out who that was. I can't quite find it, but yeah, several incidents unfortunately unfolding in that opening couple of corners.
And we are seeing Orlando Retz trying to make that one more position, basically bump drifting on Merman in front. Now going to the outside. Will he try anything around 130R? Doesn't try anything. That would be a very brave this early on. But now into the Casio triangle, still staying behind, and I think losing a bit of ground to try and make that move. Yeah, now after lap 1, too far behind to try anything into turn 1. Erbrich, meanwhile, pulling away quite good already. It's behind, we see a host of fastest laps as everyone makes their way around. My timing's currently a bit going mad a bit, and we have another car off. That's the 500 car of Adam Dubiel, going a bit too wide in turn 1 and losing a lot of places because of that.
Yeah, and that number 7 BMW that was involved in that contact at the start has gone into the pits very early, so that upsets things substantially for that car. That was the URL team that's looking very strong by the looks of it based on the Super Pole session, so disastrous start for them. Repairing the damage obviously immediately. It will, if nothing else, get them into some clean air and trying to kind of regather themselves after that start, but yeah, that's pretty disastrous. That can also have a big effect on stint timers as well, so yeah, certainly not the start that they would have liked. It was generally clean up and down the field, but yeah, unfortunately a couple of mistakes, couple of bits of over-aggression perhaps in the opening part of the race, and unfortunately with such a large grid of cars there was a little bit of unfolding of crashes and damage involved in all that. There's a bit of shuffling going on further down the order around Diego Zamora in the 55 car. The Aston Martin, I think, of Dutlinson is battling with Hendricks just up ahead. Those two were in a bit of a scuffle going in towards the hairpin, but thankfully all remaining clean for the time being. So a few movers in the early part of the race, but already some big losers, unfortunately, early on.
I see a few cars getting quite a lot of positions. For instance, the 656 car of Martin Sinota gaining 7 positions early on. I think the biggest gainer early on. Also, at the front, we now see all 3 SPQ racing teams cars directly behind each other, so that might be very interesting. As we take a look at Mark Gewinner trying to make a move onto P5, but has to hang back for now. Also himself under pressure from the 202 car.
Ooh, yellow flag at the end of the final sector. What is going on there?
That seems to be quite a big crash. Let's take a look at the replay.
Oh, yeah, the 888 of the Lexus is struck along the road. Oh, it's a Honda that's has certainly a rework on the front of that car. It's Dor in the 729, I think, who was involved in that turn 1 and 2 incident as well. So big stuff going on there.
The 729 car now also going into the pits, I think, pulling rather backwards on track for a bit. Quickly trying to repair that damage. Here we saw one car just stationary on track, and a few drivers behind. Punting into him. Nothing he could have done there. That's just a bit of bad luck.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I've also been keeping an eye on. There's a little bit of a scrap going on involving Jamie Nuttall, championship leader in Tier 2 on the AOR series. He is chasing down James Warren in one of the Racing Anywhere SimSport cars in the Bentley. I think possibly one of our only Bentleys in the field, potentially. I certainly can't see any more for quite a while, but Jamie Nuttall, very, very quick driver, and I think that car took the win in the silver class last time out, if I'm not mistaken. It was certainly cracked racing, but that McLaren, looking very quick, has been hunting around the back of that 48 Bentley for a couple of laps now, all trying to dive towards the inside, in towards Casio Triangle. You can see Jamie Nuttall really trying. Oh, he's trying a little bit too hard there. Got a kick of oversteer, and that's going to allow the Honda of Sinolta, so gaining another position in that 656 car, and allowing him to benefit in all of that. So you can see very easy to lose time there just by pushing a little bit too hard, and Jamie Nuttall will have to try to regather himself and have another go in a minute.
Yeah, I think Jamie just taking a bit too much curb there on the exit of the corner. So yeah, just getting unsettled, losing a bit of time. So is Merman, who we just saw with a bit of a drift coming out of the S-curves, but Orlando Red's not able to take advantage of it for the moment and put himself into P3.
Yes, 4 is looking pretty competitive at the moment. Certainly seems to have some more speed than the 99 car in front. Also very impressive stuff from our race leader in the 49 car. Is solid 4 seconds clear of the rest of the field. We're only 3 laps in, and the only driver to be in the 59s as well, and that's by a good half a second to anyone else. So that Audi really pulling away up at the front, and whilst that car may not be as effectively strong later on if there are changing conditions, certainly making the most of the dry conditions and the hot temperatures at the moment.
It's very important to put such a big lead early on. Just gives you a lot of flexibility with the pit stops, a bit more freedom on strategy and a bit more security, and yeah, not coming under pressure by just making ever so small mistake. Yeah, very impressive stuff from him. Just still taking a look at Reds for that podium position fight. Still within 2/10 of Merman in front, so very, very determined to gain that position, but hasn't quite managed to get ahead just yet. You can also see in the background, basically from P4 down to P12, how close the battle is between all of those drivers. Not quite close enough for anyone to really try any moves at the moment, but they're sticking with it.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think Rats in the cockpit of that McLaren will be, getting frustrated at the lack of top speed in that car. It looks like it's behaving very, very well in the corners as they're coming up to a Lexus and make calls. Oh, we have a yellow flag out for the 728. That is Voodoo in the Honda. Has just got going again through there, so I'm not sure if there was contact for that car through that sequence of corners, but yeah, another one victim of that opening part of the lap. But yeah, that McLaren is not the strongest in a straight line, and yeah, that's mostly at the moment what is holding back Rats from being able to make a proper charge for an overtake. So difficult stuff for him, but a lot of time left in the race to try to make up his way onto the podium.
Yeah, we just saw Voodoo from Team Halfman, Grumpy Old Men, so good to see they self-censored their team name. That used to be a different name. Just getting a small pun from the 189 car with big consequences, and almost puts himself into the wall again, but manages to hang on for now, down to P34 for the moment.
Yeah, I was just also having a look at, we've got Niels Kuhl and Diogo Zamora that were getting very intimate on the way in towards the hairpin. The 55 just gave the Aston in front a little bit of a nudge on the braking zone, has dropped back a little bit, now has gone very wide through spoon curve, so if anything may come under a bit of pressure from Allendorf just behind. But yeah, that's certainly an area of the circuit where cars can bunch up very, very easily, and sometimes it can go wrong. We see quite a few drivers sometimes attempting to go for a bit of a dive bomb into that area of the lap, but no such attempts just yet, staying a bit refrained from doing so, but still getting very much cozy amongst those drivers. Also a gap that's come down quite considerably again after it opened up was that between Manuel Rutter and Dan Barnard in the Aston just in front. I think the BMW may have a go going in towards turn 1 now, showing the nose, but is a little bit too far back to make anything happen just yet. So a lot of cars very much in proximity for making overtake, but just can't seem to get themselves right now into a position to make anything stick.
It seems to be pretty much the story all around the grid, especially in the top 12 cars. I guess it's the top 12. Order has been pretty much staying the same since race start, apart from that incident. But yeah, just all of them within half a second of each other, but not really able to make any moves. Or rather, maybe they are able to, but not really, not really daring to make any moves this early on. That might just end with you in the wall or in the gravel trap, and more importantly, in the pits.
Yeah, someone that was just thinking about one not too long ago was Dominic Gault's down in 12th place at the moment behind the 115 car. 115 was my time, but no, it's the 115. As Dominic Gault now actually makes a similar mistake to one of the Astons on the previous lap and goes slightly wide at Spoon Curve, but did have a bit of a look down the inside at the hairpin. The Audi, though, parked in the middle of the track, and no such luck for the Aston Martin to make a move just yet. Someone that's continuing to look racy, though, is the number 5 of Manuel Rutter. He's still not too far adrift from the Aston of Dan Barnard in front, but the 177 car is getting a lovely tow off the 760 in front, and that is just making it a little bit troublesome for the BMW to make anything stick, because even though the BMW has some pretty good straight line speed and grunt around this circuit, it does seem to be one of the overall best performing cars. We saw it was generally quite competitive in the Super Bowl session. It doesn't seem to quite have enough grunt to make a move on the Aston. In actual fact, Dan Barnard is now looking potentially in a position to make a move onto Patrick just in front. The 177 going down the inside in towards turn 1. The 760 leaving him room, and it looks like Barnard has managed to get through. In actual fact, Manuel Rutter trying to sneak through as well, but won't be able to do anything. In actual fact, backs off the throttle, was now under pressure from Dan Solo in the Mercedes, trying to go around the outside. That'll turn into the inside for the next part of the S's, but I think is going to run out of track to make that one stick. And I did see a yellow flag coming out for someone further down the order. I'm not quite sure who that was for, but Dan Barnard in the Aston Martin able to make up a position there.
I think just a small touch between Barnard and the 760 car, so that meant that Rutter had to brake into turn 1 and almost enabled Dan Solo to get past, but not quite this time around. So yeah, just a black eye, but nothing too major happening there. And I am not quite sure. I think that yellow flag might have been for the 340 car, who are also now in the pits. But other than the early pit stop cars, who had to pit due to some sort of damage, some sort of incident, the field still quite close together.
Oh, we've actually got a little bit of an inter-team battle going on at the moment between the 201 and 203. The BMW trying to go down the inside on this car towards 130R. Almost 3 wide, going in towards Casio Triangle. That was surprising. Oh, who was that going flying past?
Somebody
that was
going on there.
Yeah, the 127 car completely missed their braking, possibly caught out a little bit from the carnage going on through 130R. But the SPQ racing team cars certainly not leaving too much on the table there, as there's a yellow flag out for the 656. Oh, it's Martin Sinolta, who was at a big rework on the front of that Honda. That car looking substantially less aerodynamic than it was at the start of the race, and Sinolta, one of the biggest movers on the grid, seems to have come unstuck, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll see what happened there, but yeah, big disappointment for them. And the SPQ racing team cars getting surprisingly feisty at this stage of the race.
I'm not quite sure if they are in the same Discord, but I'm guessing it was a very heated discussion if they were. So just a small contact between Cinotti and Murano, which meant Cinotti losing the position on both sister cars, especially after the start where they already lost 3 positions. Very bad luck, but also very good to see these 3 liveries, all looking the same, but all looking fantastic, following each other, almost going 3 wide there out of 130R.
Yeah, that was that's something that you might expect to see on the final lap of a sprint race. It's about 15 minutes in between team cars is yeah, perhaps not the most reliable way to start off an endurance race to see the whole team getting through to the end. But yeah, a little bit of shuffling, bumping and scrapping between those guys, but thankfully nothing too significant. In actual fact, probably the one that had the biggest moment in it all was the 127 of Fideli, but seemed to get caught out in that whole exchange and went very deep on the brakes in towards the Casio Triangle. Checking back in on a battle that we've had kind of going back and forth. Rats is still lingering about half a second away from Moman, but just doesn't seem to be able to quite find a way through as it stands. It'll be interesting to see what their laps are this time around. Moman last time had the advantage of found a little bit of pace, had a couple of tenths over the McLaren, and they were almost spot on even within just a couple of hundredths of a second of each other last time around. So these two may not be able to do too much more in terms of changing position for the time being, but if nothing else, they will look to try and get themselves just kind of cemented perhaps into those positions in the early stages of this race. Someone else that's trying to put a bit of pressure onto the car in front is Mark Gavina in the 42, just a little bit adrift of those pair for the podium behind these two battling. The 991 of Paul Shaban in the BMW and then the Aston Martin of Gavina, scrapping for the end of the top 5 positions. And right now it does seem like Gavina in the Aston Martin is just a bit quicker, has a bit more confidence, and is slowly applying some more pressure to the BMW in front.
Yeah, this battle has been brewing for quite some time, and seemingly Gavina starting to lose patience here, which is pretty much the contrary to Reds in front, who has been following Merman pretty much 1/10 behind, almost bump drafting on every straight, but now I think has somewhat let off just to get into the groove, start to race his own race. As I'm saying this, already getting into the 2/10 range again. But yeah, just a small incident on the curb there, small moment, and that is just losing him enough straight line speed, especially on the BMW, to try anything here. But
yeah,
Gavina is having a look into 140R. Thinks better of it though.
Yeah, I think wisely backs out of it. That one can go south very quickly if yeah, if you don't compromise. It really is a case of both cars have to compromise. If you're going to go side by side through there or make an overtake through there, you really do have to pay a lot of respect to the other car. As what's going on at the exit of Casio Triangle, Ryan Cooper and Adam Dubel swapping around, and Robin Moe getting involved in all of that as well, moving towards the inside line. The Ferrari's going to get a tow off the Honda in front. The Honda of Robin Moe trying to out-drag the pair of them on the run down towards turn 1, almost 3 wide there. And the 117 car trying to go alongside the Ferrari, and I think it's got the camber for next corner and will make the move stick. But yeah, that all got rather scrappy between those drivers. You see, as soon as one kind of car makes a mistake, compromises their speed and momentum, then all of a sudden you have someone else immediately on your gearbox trying to capitalise. There was also a swapping of position further down the order with Manuel Rutter making his way past the 760 car not too long ago, up through the exit of turn 7 and up over Dunlop curve, was able to out-drag the Aston Martin. It's fallen a little bit back now into a almost 3 or 4 way scrap with the likes of Dan Solo and Dutton not too far behind. So yeah, quite a few battles going on in the order at the moment, as we would expect. There's a lot of cars on this grid, a lot of variance in pace. Some will qualify better than others, some will have their faster drivers in, some will have their slower drivers in. So it's, there's bound to be a lot of shuffling, but generally speaking, so far some nice clean half-air battles in the opening 20 minutes of this 8-hour race. And 30 minutes time, we have rain. So we have rain on the way in this race, and that will be something that these drivers will be preparing for. It times potentially quite nicely with the kind of the tail end of some of these drivers' stints, so it may work into their strategies fairly well, but that will be something that these drivers will be paying close attention to and starting to consider, start getting their tyre pressures and all of those sorts of aspects kind of ready and adjusted and changed. And yeah, they'll be having to consider very much what they do in that phase of the race.
Yeah, the rain percentage was quite high, but it's yeah, interesting to see it hitting this early on in the race, and that's gonna make things a lot more interesting. Not that we would need it to get more interesting, just looking at this battle between Mö, Dubiel and Cooper that's still going on. They have...
Oh, got a yellow flag out in the background, just trying to see who that's for.
That's
660
of Fenrix.
Yep, and Dutton has also come into the pits as well. I don't know if he was involved in that. I think those two were quite close on circuit, but yeah, Hendricks.
Just getting a small punt from behind from Dutton. I think that was just some sort of communication problem with the 920 car trying to get into the pits.
Yeah, it's a big shame there. Unfortunately, it can happen. The entry to the Suzuka pit lane is a little bit of an awkward one, because you're coming out of that final chicane pretty much foot to the floor, and everybody's running through on that inside tight line through down in towards turn 18, and all of a sudden if you have someone lifting off in front of you or even having touched the brake to try to get the car turned in to the pit lane and they haven't applied any form of indicators or anything like that, unfortunately those sorts of incidents can happen. So yeah, unfortunate stuff there for those two drivers in such an early portion of the race as well.
Currently, we are looking at Jamie Nuttall. If I am going to go by the chat in the sprint race on Tuesday, one of the fan favorites here, still making moves, now looking at the back of the number 13 car, already gaining 8 positions so far this race, so Jamie with a lot of speed, not that is a surprise, very quick driver, but yeah, keeping things even more interesting by fighting through the field here.
Yeah, definitely, and crucially, the car just behind him, the 28 car of Bar Raven, that is the next silver class car. So right now that 420 car is the silver class leader and looks to be trying to make a few more positions up through the field and put some extra cars between themselves and the 28. But yeah, Jamie Nuttall, very fast driver. We're used to seeing him in the Hondas. Meanwhile, Mark Gavina and Matteo Morano have swapped positions through the opening part of the lap. That BMW was closing in the recent laps and does look like they've managed to get the position done in the opening sequence of corners. So the SBQ Racing Team, the 201 car, moves themselves up into P6, and Giuseppe D'Anna in the SBQ, one of the SBQ Racing Team Audis, is not too far behind and maybe also looking to make a move shortly as well. So still drivers shuffling around the order. I think also another move that may have just happened was between Oscar Motin and Lord Nem in the 666 Lexus. Lexus very quick in a straight line, and I think promoted themselves up to 34th position. So plenty of overtakes still happening, but without rain on the way, it'll be interesting to see how the pace of certain drivers, will the likes of Jamie Nuttall, who's strong in the current kind of position, will that 420 car, I imagine there'll be a driver change into the wet potential unless he does a double stint, who will kind of have the best pace as we transition into that weather, and how aggressively the rain comes as well will be a big factor during that portion of the race. So interesting stuff ahead without a doubt.
Also, I'm guessing quite some drivers at the moment having realized the weather forecast, frantically trying to make their way past a few cars just to get that position locked in before the rain hits and before everything becomes a lot more unpredictable. Not the least the way your fellow racers are going to drive on circuit. It's always a bit more risky in the rain with other cars around, so you might just want to drive alone once rain hits the track.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was just, I saw Jamie Nuttall looking like he was trying to size up a move onto Simon Beeg ahead. He's in the slipstream once more. I'm not sure he's going to be close enough to go for a move towards turn 1. He's a little bit too far adrift at the moment. Very equal pace in a straight line, of course, between those two similar cars. Also, actually, Robin Moe trying to sneak up towards the inside of Ryan Cooper in the Honda just ahead. We've got a yellow flag out for 25 car. I'm trying to work out, that is Castro, who has gone off at 130R, so the Ferrari has had issues there. Meanwhile, we've also got Dan Solo and Patrick in the 760 going side by side through the S's, with the Mercedes coming out on top in all of that. So we've still got plenty of action. When it rains, it certainly pours. It might be the same when the rain does actually come in, but we have moments of calm, and then all of a sudden complete chaos ensues. But certainly keeps us on our toes for all the action that we've got going on in this race.
Very much a caster's nightmare, this race. As we're currently looking at Dominic Goetz, who this time I'm not going to call Daniel the whole race. Dominic Goetz taking a look at P11, and also still at the front, the battle between Reds and Merman getting a bit more heated up again. And we also have the leading SBQ Racing Team car, the 201, taking a look at P5, currently 2 tenths behind Paul Scheben in front. So yeah, everything going off at the moment. Not quite sure what to follow actually, as we still have 7.5 hours to go. It's yeah, very exciting race so far. Hoping it keeps on going like this.
Yeah, certainly keeping us on our toes. I imagine that's not going to be any different when the rain hits as well. The two BMWs scrapping for P5 at the moment. Oh, a little bit of a sideways moment for Morano on the entry towards turn 2. The BMW car that is generally quite nicely settled and comfortable through those first couple of corners, more so than some other cars. It's, you know, the distribution of the front engine, rear wheel drive, good aero package on that car, quite a long car as well. Surprisingly, I do believe it's actually bigger than the M6, which is always something that's rather comical when you see the two side by side. We think of the M6 as this big, chunky, wide car. The M4 is actually larger, but what it does do is it gives it quite a good platform for stable cornering in these kind of high-speed and medium-speed corners. But, yeah, the 201 car getting a little bit scrappy on the entry towards second apex. Thankfully, no contact with Paul Shaban in the 991 car just in front. And those two continuing to battle for the time being. But what that is allowing is the likes of Gavina, Giuseppe, Dana, and Sonotti, who's a little bit further drift of that, but is allowing certainly the 7th and 8th position cars to close up a bit and start to get involved in all of this. Another battle further down the order that's also continuing on is between the Aston Martins that have been, yeah, this trio have been battling for quite a while. We've got Diego Zamora currently sandwiched between Patrick in the 760 car, and then we have Niels Cool in the 169. And these three, the Delta's been opening and closing, but yeah, certainly giving us a few different battles to look at the moment. Still 30 minutes apparently until the rain hits. I imagine that in about 10 minutes or so time that will switch over as there is obviously that 20-minute unknown period between the cars, or between the rain predictions, excuse me, and we will then get an update when that's going to hit. But I think it's certainly looming, perhaps in the next 15 minutes or so, and the rain looks like it'd be fairly substantial. So yeah, definitely something for these drivers to contend with.
Also, just saw, we've been talking about how brave any overtaking into 130R is this audio and race. Jamie Nuttall says, yeah, that's me, and takes P16 from behind by going around the outside of this probably one of the fastest high-speed corners in ACC. Now P16 and free to chase after Dubiel in front.
Oh, we just had a little bit of contact between the Aston Martins, talked about earlier. Zamora and the 760, the 55 car, just went a little bit deep on the brakes. There was sort of a switchback that was lined up between those cars, and just tagging the rear diffuser. Thankfully, no major harm done, so they all continue pointing in the same direction, and thankfully no spinners sent off through that opening sequence. But yeah, Jamie Knuckles go around the outside at 130R. It's a very brave move indeed. As someone else trying to go around the outside is Zamora. It's going to turn in towards the inside, in towards the first deck. They're just about giving each other, oh, I was going to say enough from, I spoke too soon, as unfortunately the 760 car sent wide out the exit of the first deck there, and that's allowed Niels Cool in the 169 car to get involved in all of that and make up a position as well. So I feel like that was a long time coming. Those cars were continuing to battle fairly intensely, and unfortunately the 760 car coming off worse in all of that. And yeah, thankfully nothing too major, but certainly significant enough to see them drop a couple of positions.
Keeping up with the trend of not knowing which battle to follow, Robin Moe currently taking a look at Cooper in front. At the same time, we still have that battle going on between the two BMWs of Marano and Scheben. That's for P5. We also just watched Reds still trying to make his way past Merman to make it onto the podium steps. But yeah, it's basically been the same for the past 30 minutes. Red's not really getting past because he's just missing that speed on the straight on the BMW in front.
Yeah, that's a very frustrating place to be in as a driver. I imagine that any Any drivers that sport the Porsche in particular that are in chat are probably giggling to themselves. Obviously, they've had to suffer the detriment of having low straight line speed for, well, feels like quite a long time. The recent BOPs have made that side of things a little bit more easy to contend with. But the McLaren used to be an absolute bullet in a straight line, was able to run very low rear wing at certain locations, and the engine performance was quite in its favour, and it was quite a fast car. But unfortunately now it's one of those cars where it's got good handling performance, it's very good around the high speed sorts of corners, but unfortunately does tend to be one that loses out straight line. Someone else that's lost out actually recently is Zamora, who after making up that position is now actually getting some flashing headlights from the 760 behind. So I'm not sure if there was an ongoing scrap between them, but that allowed Niels Kuhl in the 169 car to make up a position, and the Aston Martin of Zamora returning back to that 24th spot, after having not got or just made the overtake not too long ago, was continuing to be heavily flashed from the Aston Martin of 760 behind. So clearly not very happy about the scrap that took place between those two at the first Egner earlier on, and is filling up the 55's rear mirrors with flashes, as I've just seen a yellow flag, I think, for the 63 pop up. I'm not entirely sure who that was for, although someone else that has gone on is Morano, has finally made up the position onto Paul Shaban for getting into P5 then, so I imagine that was on the run towards turn 1 and 2. And the SBQ Racing team, the 201 car, makes up another position and get themselves into the top 5.
Yeah, that was indeed into turn 1. Also a bit of contact between the two. I don't think Shame too happy with that. But yeah, both carrying on. Also on Morano, he just made a small mistake out of 140R, got into the gravel and lost the position. So not quite sure what the flashing is about. Probably, yeah, just the incident beforehand. That's still on everyone's minds.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, particularly in the endurance race, if you feel that you've been, racing fairly, that, yeah, you might feel rather hard done by if you're not given the room that you feel like you are privy for. And the move that we may be about to have happen is a 203 onto the back of Mark Gavina in the 42. The Audi has been closing in over the last few laps. This bunch of 4 cars has actually been closing in on one another as they've been scrapping at various points, but the Audi does look to be pretty competitive through the opening sector, and it is gaining in the slipstream on the run down towards 130R. Not quite close enough though. Someone else that might be close so in the background was Fideli, trying to make a move onto the 202 car, the last of the trio of SBQ racing cars, but Fideli unable to do anything, so neither Audi able to make up a move for the time being, but they are definitely lurking in the background trying to make something happen, as one driver that we know has been on the move for quite a while is Jamie Nuttall, who was closed up onto another train. It's getting very busy with Robin Moe now capitalising on a mistake from Ryan Cooper in the number 1 car, and the pink Honda making its way through as they snake their way down towards turn 1. As Robin Moe will lead, will the Honda just behind be able to make anything happen? Will Jamie Nuttall be able to make anything happen? They all stay in the same positions. Ferrari almost into the back of the Honda just ahead, but thankfully all giving each other just enough room. So Ryan Cooper, I think, making a mistake under brakes on the entry towards Casio Triangle, and Robin Moe capitalising on that brilliantly and allowing that pink Honda to make up a position.
And we've seen that already quite a few times into turn 1 with battles with multiple cars, just one car braking a bit earlier, a bit harder than the rest, and another car behind almost collecting them. So will be interesting to see if we see some more incident in turn 1, just due to the, I think it was the Constantina effect of cars just, yeah, braking a bit harder than expected. I think that was the 3rd time we've seen that happen. But Robin Moe now, after getting that overtake done, free to pursue. After Goetz in front, 11 seconds between them, so you can see how much Moe was held up by Cooper in front, who was defending brilliantly for quite a few laps.
Yeah, also a change of position that's happened down towards the hairpin. Orlando Rats has finally got himself into the podium spots, dived down towards the inside of the number 99 car of Moman, and made that one stick very cleanly and nicely. So it'll be interesting to see what that McLaren, the 444, can do now that it is in free air. Well, these two were lapping very, very closely to one another, so I imagine that Moman is certainly not going to let go of the gearbox of the McLaren up ahead too soon, but Orlando Rats generally has been the quicker car in the opening part of this race, and now is, much like Robbie Moe, able to go exploring in clean air up in front. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. As someone else that's trying to reclaim a position is Ryan Cooper. Also Jamie Nuttall going side by side with Adam Dubiel into turn 1 and 2, gets the cut back. The Ferrari went very, very deep there, and now on the exit, the Ferrari will have the inside, all chopping across the nose of the McLaren, but maintaining the position as a result. So Jamie Nuttall still unable to make his way past, but definitely continuing to put pressure onto that Ferrari, who has now lost a bit of toe from the Hondas up in front, so we'll be suffering a bit more in straight line speed, and evens up the playing field a little bit perhaps for Jamie Nuttall in that McLaren to try to out-drag the Ferrari just in front.
Just to do due diligence, we haven't mentioned them so far, really. Vincent Erbrich in the 49 car and Leonardo Porcio in the number 3 car. 5 seconds and 8 seconds ahead, respectively, in P1 and P2. They have been driving a very, very good race, a very quiet race, but that's really what you want to do in an endurance race like this. Still leading the grid, leading the pack, without really any threat behind them for the time being. But there is one threat above them, and that's the rain. That's supposed to start in around 10 minutes. To see the wind picking up just ever so slightly. But wind speed, yeah, 2 kilometers per hour. So if the rain arrives, it's probably going to be there to stay for some time.
Yeah, there was also a swapping of position further down the order between... I've lost the name now. I think it was Reed Aldred in the 17 car on Oscar Motin, and made a very nice and clean move down towards turn 1. So a couple... Oh, who was that going off in just the background? When I was looking at those cars, there was a car that went very, very wide there. I think it might have been, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been the Reigning Thunder 777 car, who may have gone off at turn 10. I couldn't quite see what there was in the back of the picture. But yeah, that rain on the way. Oh, isn't that interesting? It's going to be quite a brief rain shower, because in 30 minutes we're back to dry. So this is a very interesting period of the race then for these drivers to try to contend with, because that means that this rain shower is going to be no longer than 20 minutes. So, you know, how do you try to play that? Do you try to go for just simply a very short stint? Do you dare even try to get the slick tyres to maybe stay out on the rain if it's particularly light rain? The slick tyres can sometimes be the better option, because the wets will violently overheat very, very quickly if there is not enough surface water down on the track. So that can be something. Always meanwhile, Jamie Nuttall and Adam Dubiel going side by side on towards the entry to the hairpin. The McLaren trying to go around the outside of the Ferrari, kept his nose in there. Simon Beek, always just a bit of contact between the pair of them there on the exit. But I think the McLaren of Jamie Nuttall will have got the move done now. If anything, the Ferrari's lost a bit of momentum, maybe susceptible to Simon Beek on the run up towards the top of the hill, but I think the 13 car a little bit too far adrift. So Jamie Nuttall making up another position then, getting himself up into P15. The stop the Ferrari locks onto his gearbox, and the Ferrari probably the faster car in a straight line as well, so he's not completely out of the woods just yet, but I think he has got enough of the gap. Maybe the tow from the Honda just up ahead helping out a bit. So the 420 car, silver class leader, making up another position in a bold fashion around the outside there. As Adam Dubiel did get a huge run through 130 yards, storms down the inside in towards Casio Triangle, gets it, stops beautifully and reclaims that position immediately and then goes defensive on the exit. Jamie Nuttall now trying to go around the outside, holding the Ferrari to the middle of a track. A little bit of bumping between the pair of those two cars. Again, the 420 car has got the greater speed in a straight line, though, it seems, and will get the position taken just in front of the braking zone before turn 1 there. And despite that fantastic attempt to reclaim it, the 500 car unfortunately having to relinquish that position in the end, and Jamie Nuttall then taking that P15 spot. But what a scrap between those two, as going to another battle immediately. Fedeli and Poreka in the battle just outside the top 10. The 115 car going wide on the exit, and that's allowed Dominic Gultz to potentially sneak through on the run up towards the hairpin, and he does get that move made. Does he? The 115 car not able to reclaim that one. So, yeah, all kicking off very, very quickly between so many different cars, so many different scraps going on. And that brief period of rain could be very, very interesting for how all of these teams try to deal with that.
That's also the first time I've actually managed to put a commentator's curse on rain, as we see the battle between Merman and Marano. Small contact there between the two. Merman getting pushed out wide, flashing his lights, and rightfully so, I would imagine, because that wasn't quite a fair pass by Marano, but he doesn't really seem to mind. Carries on now in P4. So, yeah, the 2-1 car making up quite a few positions early on in the race. Starting from P9, now up into P4. We also saw just another pass further down the field. That was Dan Solo on Barnard. Let's just take a look at the replay. Yeah, just going around through the inside. I could show when that pass happened. I think there must have been some sort of mistake from Dan Barnard somewhere. Let's also see, we have another battle on the back of that fight between Nuttall and Dubiel we just saw. That's the number 28 car on the number 30 car. The Ferrari on the McLaren coming into turn 1. Raven on the outside and doesn't quite have the speed to try and move, has to hang back, loses quite a bit of time there on the McLaren in front. But
yeah, that Ferrari will be concerned about the fact that Jamie Nuttall is still a class leader, of course. He's now got 2 cars between himself and Bart Raven. So, yeah, whilst it may only be the opening 45 minutes of this 8-hour endurance race, Raven will be looking to try to make his way through the field as quickly as possible, ideally. Although I have just realised it is actually that car that was the silver class winner last time around. So it was Jamie Nuttall's team, the Crash Racing car. I'm assuming must have finished a bit further down the order then. Just trying to have a look at the standings board. I can't quite place them at the moment, but yeah, I think that 28 car was the car then that took the silver class win at the opening round, but is quite clearly a little bit adrift from the 420 car of Jamie Nuttall, another one of the Crash Racing team cars that is making substantial progress through the field at the moment.
Diego Zamora at the same time trying to keep up with his progress through the field, already making up 11 positions and making that 12 going through the inside of the hairpin on Niels Kohl, or Cool, I'm not quite sure. I think it should be Cool because that's just a nicer name.
We've got a drag race towards turn 1 between Fedeli and Sonotti. Fedeli trying to go around the outside of the 202 car. I think Sonotti, just a little bit contact on the entry to the braking zone there. I think Sonotti went a little bit deep under brakes there, gets tagged by Fedeli on the entry, fighting back though towards the S's and storming down the inside. Fedeli being shoved off across the S's end. Dominic Goldsworth might get a free position out of that, I imagine, and he does. But I imagine that Fedeli will not be too pleased about that. The two Italians battling very, very hard there, and I think Sonotti arguably, I'm not sure, when it looked like he went a little bit deep under brakes on the entry towards turn 1, and they kind of got caught up over each other. But yeah, Sonny went steaming down the inside through the S's, and that brought Dominic Gultz into the mix to work his way up into the top 10. And yeah, I imagine that these drivers will be entering potentially the phase for their first series of pit stops very, very soon. And we'll get the first sort of glimpse of how each of these teams starts trying to play out the strategy, particularly with that brief shower of rain, because it certainly looks like for the foreseeable future after that point that these drivers will be in dry conditions. So will we have teams that gamble just going for the slicks, as Fideli goes very, very wide in the background over Spoon Curve, and that allows Porika in the 115 car to make his way through up into 11th place. So Fideli's day going bad from worse, but still plenty of time to recover those positions. But it'd be very interesting if drivers do try to go for the safe option, going for the wet tyres, or do they try to get the slicks just to get them through that brief period and then bring them up to temperature again when the track does start to dry out. So interesting stuff on the horizon here for the 8 Hours of Suzuka.
So just saw Dominic Girls almost trying a move through 140R, but pulled out at the last minute there. It almost went quite badly. Giuseppe Dana, the 203 car, one of the SPQ Racing Team cars, also chasing after Scheben in front. I think that battle has been heating up for the last few laps, now in full effect. So the three sister cars are trying to make progress through the field, except for Shinotto. He still hasn't quite recovered from losing those 5 places at the start.
Yep, someone else though is trying to make up for lost time is Jamie Nuttall as the rain just starts to calm down. Jamie Nuttall making a beautiful move around the outside of Ryan Cooper in towards turn 1 and 2. You can see the flurry of windscreen wipers though immediately coming on. So now this is interesting. So the rain is coming down, it's starting to come down now, but it's very, very light. But the track immediately turns to green conditions, so the track conditions have changed very, very quickly. The pace will rapidly drop off, and it then goes to greasy. 10 minutes time, the rain is going to increase, but we know it's going to fall off again. So this is a very interesting stage of the race for all of these drivers.
Tell you what, Dominic Girls already having been caught out by that track condition changing twice, losing 2 positions there on Fideli and Poreka. He just gained a few laps ago. Yeah, losing the car into the hairpin. Track already down to greasy as well, so changing very, very quickly now. Wouldn't be surprised if we see quite a few drivers now making mistakes they can't really afford. Just such as Giuseppe Dana, who of course doesn't try any move through 140R in these conditions, but is still quite close to Scheben in front of him. We have the first car to pit, that's Vincent Erbrich from P2, but I
P1, it was our race leader.
Yeah, P1, excuse me. Also Marano from P4 pitting as well. Would be very surprised to see if they actually change onto wet tires, but just looking at the cars on track, I don't think there's any alternative to the wet tires.
Particularly with the fact that the rain is going to get more intense, and it's going to take a good 10 minutes. So there's at least 10 minutes of these conditions as they stand right now. They're going to get worse. Then they are going to get better, but there's also going to be a period of time where the track takes time to dry up again. The track temperature has dropped down, unsurprisingly, 29 degrees. It's gonna take perhaps a little while until this surface water clears off the circuit again. So the drivers like Leonardo Porco, Orlando Rats, Mohamed Shaban, they're staying out on circuit for the time being on those slick tires. It's a tricky judgment to try to make. It'd be really interesting to see as the 49 cars emerge out of the pits to see what their pace is relative to the cars around, because if it's substantially different, then I would have to imagine that the 49 car has chosen to go onto wet tyres. If it is more or less the same, then they're probably running on the slicks with everybody else. But these are very crucial points of the race, because you're either going to have to tiptoe your way around as meanwhile up at the front, Giuseppe Dana all over the gearbox once again of Shaban, runs a little bit wide through Spoon Curve, but it does look like BMW of Shaban is struggling a bit more in these conditions than the Audi behind. So that car looking a bit more feisty in these slick running wet conditions. But yeah, these are crucial moments of the race. One, you just don't want to bin it. You don't want to risk the next 7 hours of this race by just being too ambitious too early on in these conditions. And getting that pit strategy of either the tyre call for wets or dries, as the BMW of Shaban makes a mistake under braking, allows Dana to go around the outside of Casio Triangle and makes the move stick, as meanwhile Moman up in front, that was running in P3 after our race leader came into pits, has also come into pits as well. So yeah, drivers being caught out in these conditions, and the track conditions now changes from greasy to damp as Dana then runs wide. That allows Shaban to come back again, so swapping back and forth, a little bit of contact between those two. Shaban getting a little bit out of shape on the exit at turn 2, but thankfully keeping it pointing in a straight line, relatively speaking, and not having too much of a disaster. But these are definitely some critical moments in this race. Other drivers that are looking to take the gamble, staying out, the likes of Jamie Nuttall, who's made up several positions obviously in this race already, and our race leaders come back into the pits. So I imagine then they may have gone out on slick tyres, and if they realise that the conditions are too wet for the time being, coming in for wet tyres, so our race leader having to make a double pit stop. So that could be very, very major for the effective race lead of this race, without doubt.
Yeah, just looking at the front runners, especially Paul Scheben, really struggling now. He's definitely still on the slick tires, so is everyone in front of him. But I don't think there's any way they can go on these tires. It was a gamble. I think it might have worked out if the rain came in just a little less strong. We also see track already changing to damp. That's pretty much undrivable with slick tires. A lot of drivers still pitting. Some drivers, yeah, especially our race leader, pitting twice, which also has the side effect that at this moment I have no idea what the standings actually look like anymore. It's pretty much a wild guess until everyone has to come into the pits. But yeah, some of the front runners still opting to stay out. So Leonardo Porcio was P2 before the rain started, still carrying on slick tires for at least one more lap. Last lap was a 2:13.
Oh, we've got swapping a position between who Lautenschläger has, I think, maybe made a mistake. I think lost 2 positions to Moerman and Marcel Leporius, who's trying to make a move on the exit of the hairpin, driving very, very quickly. So I imagine that Aston Martin, maybe, not entirely sure. I think these two are on the wet tyres at the moment. They've completely dropped the BMW of Yannick just behind them. These two were some of our pitters, and I do think that they've gone onto wet tyres. You can see immediately gaining several seconds. So yeah, this is crucial times, because if the likes of our race leaders are running 2:13s at the moment, and they are, generally speaking, the most competitive, as there's a yellow flag out for the 666. That's Lord Nem on the exit of the hairpin. That's unfortunately the Lexus got faced with a wall on the apex of that corner at the moment. But the 2:13s for some of our fastest drivers still out on the slick tyres for the time being. Try have to keep an eye on the times from Moerman and Leporius, as they will be generally quite telling of what the delta between those two tyre compounds is at the moment. So Moerman will be about to hit the timing beam in a second, and it is a 2:19. Curiously, they've got 2:11 up for Leporius. I'm not sure. Maybe those lap times are still affected by some pit timers. I'm not 100% sure, although I think a 2:11 actually is fairly representative, because Francesco Farina in the 2:01 SPQ Racing BMW, not too far ahead, was their lap time last time around. So it looks like at the moment there's a couple of seconds difference, and in 10 minutes time the rain is going to start easing off, so it may be worthwhile to try to stretch out these slick tyres for as long as possible. So our race leading Audi may have made a bit of an unfortunate call by committing to slick tyres and then backing out of it kind of before the rain starts to peel off again. So it's very tricky times in this race.
There was also, I think, contact between the 28 and 500 cars. Both should still be out on slicks, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, just looking at some of the cars we know are still out on slicks. So we just followed Yannick Lautenschläger, who lost 2 positions a few seconds ago. Didn't actually make a mistake, but just has no pace whatsoever on the wet runners. But still opting to stay out. I guess at this point, it's also somewhat too late to actually change your mind on that strategy. If you go into the pits for wets now, you're just losing out twice. But on the other hand, looking at Manuel Rutter from the other Hela Gewürzketchup team, still in P9, also still out on dry tires, running at around a 2:15 pace at the moment, which is a lot slower than the drivers who went in for wet tires. But might just win out win on staying out, was what I wanted to say. And we ought to see penalties coming in. 10-second penalty for Dominic Goelz, currently in P3, also still currently on dry tires.
Yeah, we've also, unfortunately, I saw a drive-through for one of the cars further down the order, didn't quite catch the number, and then there's also a stop-go 30 for the 189 Mercedes. That's very detrimental, unfortunately, for them. Cars continuing to shuffle around the order at the moment. I think Zamora just lost a position to Farina, who has come into the pits and imagine we believe is on those wet tyres. There's now about a 4.5 second difference between the fastest wet tyre runner and the fastest dry tyre runner on the current grid. And 4.5 seconds, maybe about another 5 laps of these conditions. It's going to be pretty close in terms of kind of who has the advantage here. But bearing in mind, those are still out on the dry tyres. They are yet to make a pit stop. So, you know, when these wet tyres then fall off and we switch to dry running, they will have to make a pit stop as well. So I think this wet kind of stint has probably benefited those that are staying out on the slicks. I think that they will generally hold the advantage, but the main thing for them is just to try to keep it on the track for the time being, because it is very, very tricky conditions for them to contend with, and it's so easy to lose a car on a wet track with these when you're running slick tyres. It's very easy to make a mistake, as we've already seen a few drivers doing. So yeah, very tricky and treacherous times, and impactful times for the race in terms of strategy as well, because the fact that the likes of our race leading car that had about a 6-second advantage ended up seemingly making quite a wrong call that's going to hurt them in terms of strategy. It's certainly a tricky portion of the race for all of these drivers to face in all forms.
Also important to remember the stint time actually changing to 70 minutes for this season, compared to the 60 minutes it was in all previous seasons. So that might benefit the drivers who opted to stay out, as they can pretty much come into the pits once the rain stops. But yeah, for the time being, we're just following Francesco Farina on the wet tires, on the dry runners, just finding traction where there doesn't exist any for the cars still on slicks. A very exciting part of the race. Also just trying to find out where our previous race leader ended up after having to pit twice. That was Vincent Erbrich in the 49 car, currently in P23. So, disaster for them.
You've also got quite a scrap hotting up for 27th position between Oscar Motin, Jacob Tarasuk and Jordan Woodley. The 760 diving towards very bravely, and perhaps too bravely. Oh my goodness, they barely held on to the car there. I believe each of these cars may be on, I'm not sure exactly what tyres these guys are on. I think they might be on slicks, but yeah, Jacob had a huge moment through Spoon Curve, went full on Tokyo drift style around the outside, and as a fact, Jacob might be on the wet tyres. I think it might be Oscar Motin that has stayed out on the slicks. We have a yellow flag for another car. That was who was that for? I saw going slowly. I can't quite work out. I thought it looked like the 55, but I can't seem to see any issues or even find that race number actually on the leaderboard, so I'm not sure who that was for. But yeah, that's got very treacherous. Also, big speed difference right now between the wet runners and those that are on slick tyres, as Manuel Rutter continuing to try to make progress on a car in front. That is James Warren struggling in the Bentley at the moment, also coming under pressure actually from Moerman and Marcel Leporius. Those are some of our fastest wet drivers as well. Moment making their way through, and Leporius trying to follow on as well through the Casio triangle and making light work of Manuel Rutter in all of that. They may actually come under a little bit of pressure.
Almost losing the cars were coming onto the main straight. Porias just a bit of a cut there on the chicane, but I don't think Rutter's going to complain about that. There was nothing he could have done on the main straight on the slick tires. Rain now 10 minutes from stopping completely, and we are about 9 minutes away from the mandatory pit stop for those who haven't pitted yet, which is quite a few drivers around the grid actually. Especially those drivers from P1 down to P5. All of them haven't been to the pit yet. Or rather, one of them has, as Francesco Farina just overtook Dubiel for P5.
Yeah, I think we've also had some other swapping of positions. There's a Leporius again all over the back of the Bentley of James Warren, who is struggling out on those slick tyres at the moment. I think there's a back marker of the Mercedes. I'm not sure if there's a little bit of a nudge there from the BMW that was making their way through. You see Leporius so furiously flashing the lights there. This is for position. They're clearly on very different tyres, and there's a tiny bit of contact, thankfully not sent around out the hairpin though, but Marcel Leporius has the better traction, and I imagine maybe able to outdrag the Bentley up the hill as the BMW of Marvel sweeps around the outside James Warren as well, and will slot behind Marcel Leporius. All of that battling lost them a little bit of time to Moment, who has gapped them by quite a few seconds actually, and is putting a lot of pressure onto Bart Raven in the Ferrari, currently second in the silver class, and the BMW trying to make a move down towards 130R. The Ferrari will lift off the throttle and let them through. So the number 99 car making up another position and substantial breathing space between themselves and Leporius now in the 42 car that they were previously scrapping with. But yeah, right now in these conditions, we've got sort of low to high 15s, generally seems to be the slick tyre pace, and then comparing that to the likes of Francesco Farina, who took another 4 seconds out of all of that. It's I think it might be a little bit too late for these wet tyre strategy, because as you said, it is going to time rather nicely for the stint timers of these drivers, and when they look to make their pit stop, of course, those that are on wet tyres at the moment, they will have to make a pit stop to move themselves back across to the slick tyres as well, and I think they will start to drop down the order. So particularly I think the most affected car and all of that, and I'm surprised that they went for it, is going to be Vincent Erbrick in the 49 car. Still holds the fastest lap of the race and is lapping very quickly out of the wet runners, but is actually very quick at the moment, 2:10.3 on that last lap, but made 2 pit stops in this phase and will have to make another one very shortly. So the 49 car leaving themselves a lot of work to do over the remaining 7 hours to try to recuperate that time and get themselves up towards the pointy end of the grid.
The other thing that will come into play here as well, though, is the drivers currently still on the slicks. They will have to pit in about 5 minutes, but the track will still be quite damp for a lot of time, so we might not just look at these 10 minutes of slick running in very wet conditions, but potentially another 10 to 15 minutes in not really ideal conditions for the dry runners. So yeah, at the moment losing around 4 seconds per lap on the drivers who opted to switch, and I have no idea how this will work out actually.
Yes, it's extremely difficult to call. We also just saw another swapping position moment, getting past Adam Debiel in the Ferrari, as also Zamora lost a position to Fedeli just in front, as another car that is getting involved in some scraps. Manuel Rutter was closing in not too long ago on to James Warren, was thinking about maybe making a move now, if anything, maybe under a little bit of pressure from Diego Carlino in the 202 SPQ Racing team car that looks to be running pretty quickly. In actual fact, I'm not sure if he'll be closing in enough on the run down towards turn 1. Looks like they got a pretty good exit out. Casio Triangle is showing the nose down towards the inside of turn 1. Manuel Rutter leaving the door very widely open, and James Warren also running a little bit wide just in front. One of these slick tyre runners that is struggling, and Kalinano trying to go around the outside in towards the S's. I think Warren backing out the throttle there as well. So the Audi making swift progress through those couple of cars and capitalising heavily on the tyre advantage, as is one of their teammates, the 203, just slightly further up the road, trying to currently make their way past Bar Raven in the 28 Ferrari, and easily outdrags that car up towards the first Degner, as I think we just saw a swapping of position also further up the order, with Adam DeBeal losing out to Marcel Aporius, who's desperately been trying to hold on to that position for quite a while, and is now coming under pressure from Tobias Marvel, who's got a wheel straddled onto the dirt, squeezing up the inside of the Ferrari, leaving them barely any room whatsoever. Marvel forcing the issue, will have the inside on the run up towards Spoon Curve, now trying to go around the outside, and in the end has the pace and grip advantage over the Ferrari that I do believe is still on slick tyres and will make their way through. So yeah, some of these drivers on the slick tyres giving way to those on the wets, and some of them putting up a little bit more of a fight. So yeah, which they are clearly entitled to do, but it can start to make things a little bit treacherous and a little bit too cozy at times between cars that quite clearly have very different pace differentials at this current point in the race.
And also we have the situation of some drivers on wets battling other drivers still on wets, while some drivers on dries try to get by those two wet runners battling themselves. So it's almost like a multi-class race suddenly appearing in the middle of this actual GT3 race, making things very difficult for everyone involved. Also just quick info to Marco and chat. There's still an F1 league on PlayStation at Apex Online Racing. So if you just go to the website, linked in the video description, where you can take a look. I think it's running until the middle of December. You might still be able to sign up in the middle of the season as a reserve driver. Just take a look there.
Yeah, just checking in on some other battles. We had Fideli just making their way past Manuel Rutter going to turn 1. We've also got some drivers making their first scheduled pit stop of the race, kind of by the looks of it, at the end of their stint timer. Diego Zamora in the 55 car choosing to do that. And Fideli already right up to the back of James Warren, who has been dropping positions like flies over the last couple laps. I think maybe about to lose another one to the 127 Audi, who does go flying through. So Jean Lacey Esports Academy car making their way up into what is currently P13 and sets off in hot pursuit of some of those up ahead. Meanwhile, we have Jamie Nuttall and Francesco Farina that have just swapped positions. So that is Jamie Nuttall, who is still out on slick tyres. Francesco Farina has been our hard-charging leader of the wet tyre runners, and crucially, the likes of Leonardo Porco and Orlando Rats now coming into the pits. I imagine we'll see a lot of people diving in. 22 of Dominic Galtz. Jamie Nuttall maybe the next one, I assume, to come in as everyone's stint timers come to an end. But you can see now the rain has stopped, so it's still wet on track, but the rain has stopped. So Farina isn't going to be able to enjoy perhaps the kind of slightly damp conditions, or certainly the wet conditions, for too long. And now that that surface water will be gradually starting to clear rain, that the rain has stopped coming down, the wet tyres will start to overheat, and that is the tricky aspect of these wet tyres. When you've got these sorts of conditions, they do start to overheat heavily. He deals with a back marker just in front of him, and that's when the slicks start to end up kind of mixing their way back into contention in these sort of halfway house conditions, where we've got these sort of greasy conditions between a dry and a wet track surface. So it'll be interesting to see how long the 201 decides to stay out on those tyres, and whereabouts then the likes of Leonardo Porco comes out in all of that when they do presumably make their pit stop in the near future.
And pretty much immediately we can see the lap times go down for the dry runners, so now down into the 2:14.8. so already gaining time, but the wet runners down into the 2.9s, so pretty much everyone gaining a bit faster lap times. For the moment, Francesco Farina leading the race, but will have to pit at some point. Not quite sure when that changeover will happen. Also, Leonardo Porcio, I think, back out of the pits in P7, and should be very comfortably leading the race once everyone in front has to pit again for dry tires. If I'm not mistaken, everyone from P1 down to P6 should be on wet tires still. Yeah, not that difficult, not that easy to spot which driver is on which tires, except by lap times. It's one of the screens that ACC really should have.
Yeah, that would be rather beneficial. Give us certainly a lot more clear information on that front. Our previous race leader, the number 3 car, all hooked up into the slipstream of the Audi just in front, trying to make a move down towards 130. It's going to get very close between them and the 202. The 202 forced slightly off the track there. May not be too pleased about that, but the number 3 car does take the position, and I imagine will then set off in hot pursuit of the next car up ahead. That is one of the other SBQ Racing Team cars, the other Audi 203, currently in the hands of Alessandro Zampieri. And yeah, very interesting point in this race. As someone pointed out in the chat, the slick tyres will grain worse in these wet conditions. There's no doubt about it. But in relative terms of maybe wet tyres that start to really badly overheat versus dry tyres that maybe have some slightly poorer graining, and then, yes, if you go from wet to dry tyres, you will then have tyres that are in better conditions throughout the remaining of that dry stint. But I'm not sure whether or not the trade-off relative to and particularly for those that have done a whole extra pit stop to go onto those wet tyres, I'm not sure if that will be net beneficial. So I think those that stuck it out onto the dry tyres and kind of ran it to the end of their stint, have done their pit stops to get a new set of slicks on their car, I think will be the ones that come out on top of all of that. Surprisingly, Vincent Erbrick in the 49 car still lapping in the 208s in what I believe are still wet tyres on that car, trying to make their way past, I think, a bit of traffic just in front, as yeah, they were looking very, very quick at the early stages of the race, but I think unfortunately that sort of double pit stop has maybe removed them slightly out of contention. Meanwhile, we have Jordan Woodley, who is dancing around on the grass, unfortunately, at the turn 1 and 2 section of the circuit, as I think they spun themselves around, and then as they put themselves back onto what will be quite wet grass on those slick tyres, couldn't quite get themselves gathered up to continue on, but don't see any major damage on that car, so I think thankfully not too badly hurt in all of that. But yeah, difficult conditions still for some of these drivers to contend with.
At the front, Merman now in the pits, and I think he was on wet tires, so I think they are now starting to change back to dry tires. Track also changing to greasy. We saw a bit ago Porcio getting past Carlino into P6, and of course Porsche again on the dry tires, also now down to 2.7 lap times. At least I'm pretty sure they were on dry tires.
Yeah, the number 3 car is out on dry tires, I believe, and that it's basically those that are still kind of lingering around that sort of end of the grid. Those are the drivers that are currently out on wet tyres. I think our next dry runner, I'm trying to see, because there's quite a gap, I believe, to who the next dry runner might be. It's very difficult actually to tell in these kind of parts. I think it might be Leon Byrne in the 444 McLaren, if I'm not mistaken. I do believe that might be the next car that stuck it out on these slicks and perhaps has benefited as a result, because just keeping an eye on the number 99 car that's just emerged out of the pit lane in front of a bit of traffic, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, seems to have dropped substantially down the order in all that. So Moerman handing over to Jack Young now, whereas Leon Burnt, who was previously, that car was in the hands of Rats. They were actually in front, thinking about it, in front of the 99 car, but there wasn't a massive gap previously between them. Now there definitely is. So things changing about there. And I think I just saw a yellow flag for the 666 car in the S's somewhere. So that is the Beeswax Racing team in the Lexus recovering there. Not quite sure what happened through the S's, but that car, not for the first time today, sadly, running into a bit of trouble.
Yeah, just seemed to pull to the side of the road. Might just be some technical problem, but now going again, thankfully. Also, yeah, more drivers pitting at the front. We have Francesco Farina, Tobias Madl, and Alessandro Sampieri coming into the pits for very likely dry tires. Just looking at the lap time of Leonardo Porcio now into the 2.72s. So yeah, dry tires again, the faster compound, and we will very soon have some sort of image of what the positions are after that yeah, very short shower that has spiced up things quite a bit. But for
there's a yellow flag out for the 63. Who is that for? That is Ricardo Sapien in the Mercedes. As yeah, they are very oddly stricken actually through the exit of Dunlop Curve. I have a horrible feeling they might have clobbered the wall in that Mercedes, because the front of that car looking like it's had a little bit of a rework, and not particularly a nice one of that. So unfortunately for the QV Motorsports car, having some sort of issue and getting damaged there. So yeah, still these conditions showing to be very tricky for some of the drivers on this grid.
So quite a few drivers now making their way out of the pits again. For the moment, I think, yeah, Leonardo Porcio gaining quite a bit by that, from what looked like a P2 too far behind P1 to really make any moves. Should be up into P1 by 7 seconds of a gap, by yeah, sticking it out on the dry tires, just being maybe a bit more brave in these conditions. And similarly, Leon Berndt, the 444 car, should go up into P2 by doing the same. So also a very, very good strategy from them. The car that didn't quite gain that much is the 420 car. They have switched drivers. Loke now in the car, taking over from Jamie Nuttall. Down into P8, still gaining quite a lot of positions before the pit stop. But I think they had a bit of a lengthy pit stop compared to the other drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also got an interesting fight kind of emerging now. We've got Loke in the 420 car that took over from Jamie Nuttall, now coming under pressure from Francesco Farina, who theoretically should have the best kind of conditioned tyres right now to be contained with this. Obviously, went onto the wets and has come back out on the slick tyres, but they won't have gone through that graining process that some of our other drivers have done. So yeah, that 201 car may be looking pretty feisty at this point in time. Also seeing another one, another Honda that's still rather optimistically got their windscreen wiper on. Not sure if it's still dry conditions for all of that. Sorry, not sure if it's wet conditions for that. But
also,
yeah.
I've just done the opposite of the commentator's course. Actually, a lot of drivers just diving into the pits, promoting the 420 car up into P3. So actually, they didn't have a lengthy pit stop. They had quite an amazing pit stop and made their way onto the podium position out of nowhere by this, yeah, by staying out on the slicks. 22 positions gained now into P3, but still under pressure from Farina in the 201 car. So maybe that will be P4 in a minute. For the moment, being the podium position with a gap of 42 seconds to the 444 car in front.
Yeah, so that's very evident of kind of what I was thinking would probably be the case for those that came in and did their pit stops, because Farina was certainly right up there when kind of that whole transition was going on in the conditions. They took the gamble on going for the wet tyres, and yeah, they've effectively just dropped an entire pit stop more or less behind our top two. So Yeah, Porco and Leon Burnt doing that very nicely. And yeah, for the 420 team, that is fantastic stuff from them. Jamie Nuttall quite clearly put on quite the show for us, surging up the order in terms of overtakes, but they nailed the strategy absolutely as well, and they find themselves in not just a very commanding position in terms of the silver class. They now have several cars between themselves and the 28, which is the next car to occupy that class, currently in the hands of Dionysus. And yeah, they're now challenging for an outright podium, as I've just seen a 1-1, the yellow flag for the 115 car of Parika down in 25th position. Another car that seems to have had an issue out of Dunlop Curve, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, mate, it seems to be a part of the circuit that they're struggling with quite a few times at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite a few cars going off at the moment, so basically replay TV at the moment. Next one was Baldwin, just a bit too eager on the throttle. I think that was out of Degner. Also now Robin Moe having an issue with a quite badly damaged bonnet. Let's take a look at what happened there. So that's in 130R, taking too much curb, losing the car and slamming into the barriers. That would be a race-ending crash in any sort of real-life application. Very lucky to go on, very lucky to have crashed near the pits, which they now dive into, unsurprisingly. So that's, yeah, 4 incidents in a span of around 1 minute. So track conditions, even though the track says optimum, which happened very fast, but very clearly still some greasy patches, still some issues for drivers struggling with grip on this changing track.
Yeah, without a doubt, as I think Dionysus and Dutnison going very, very close together through in towards the first exit of the Aston Martin, holding that inside line and keeping the position for the time being. It's allowed Milan Hack in the 48 Bentley. That was previously in the hands of James Warren, who is now trying to apply some pressure to the Ferrari in front, but that is a three-way tussle. Always Francesco Farina out-dragging the McLaren of Logue in the 420 car and taking the position up in towards P3 then before 130. I'll take a huge amount of curb actually on the entry there. I thought that was going to end in disaster, but BMW absorbing all of that very nicely indeed. So Farina takes the 201 SPQ Racing Team car up into the podium positions, but having another look back down at Dionysus versus Dutnison all over the gearbox of the red Aston Martin, maybe thinking about a move before 130R, just to pull out of the slipstream for a little bit. Very close to the back still. The Bentley lurking in the background, trying to see if it can capitalise as well. Ferrari down the inside in towards the Casio triangle, now turns into the outside. Very nicely spotted move there. Dutnison getting compromised on the exit and blocking the Bentley of the 48 car from being able to get a run. As slightly further up the order, Fedeli and Yazboski going side by side in towards turn 1 and 2. Fedeli though sent towards the outside and unable to make up a move. So yeah, quite a few cars still swapping around for position at the moment, even though the conditions have somewhat stabilised and we are back out into the sun. That yeah, definitely different drivers finding different levels of pace at this point in time.
Next driver to gain a position, that was Milan Hack on the outside of the S's. Very, very good overtaking maneuver. Gets up into P14. Hans Peter from Hilag Chop Racing taking over from Manuel Rutter. Also one of the drivers who stayed out on dry tires. They gained 8 positions by doing so. And looking to make that 9 currently following the 55 car of Zamora. And also hello to Ark in the chat. Good to see you. Also, we have Johnson, yeah, just suspecting that maybe the 420 car was led by Farina and the 201, because they are, of course, in different classes. However, points are given out to everyone, no matter what the class is, as we have a yellow flag for Alfred Lubitsch and the 77 car. Let's take a look what happened. That's turn 1, just a bit too far on the outside, takes the curb, loses the car. I don't think loses the position though. Yeah, just another one of the very common incidents we have seen after the changeover time. Fideli still chasing after the 500 car. That's for the top 10, the last top 10 position. 3 tenths behind the Audi on the Ferrari. As we've also seen Hans-Peter getting past Dudnitson, who is now going into the pits. I'm not quite sure why that is.
Oh, Fideli and Jarzbowski going side by side again. Fideli trying to go around the outside once more, but Jarzbowski having none of it. So the Ferrari holding on to that 10th place position. But yeah, I'm surprised about Dudnitson going into the pits. Actually, it was also followed in by a Honda that was Sonolta. We know actually that car had a quite big incident early on. So it could well be a bit out of sequence when it comes to the stint timers. But yeah, a rather uncharacteristically early pit stop for Dudnitson. They did have that 10-second time penalty, but I wouldn't have thought they would use that as particularly a reason to serve a penalty unnecessarily early. So I'm not sure as to kind of whereabouts that has come from. Meanwhile, we might have a move happening very soon for P4 as Loga's been reeled in by Tobias Mardell in the 991 car and is putting some pressure onto our silver class leader and seeing if they can make their way up the order, although did drop back a little bit through Spoon Curve. Should also be noted the currently fastest car on track last time around. Well, interestingly, fastest lap actually goes to our race leader, number 3, a 2:05, which is 2 tenths clear of the next fastest, which was Tobias Mardell, who did actually exactly the same time as Marcus Eichhorn in the 42 car. But interestingly, none of those have registered as the fastest lap of the race. So I'm not sure if that's due to a clash of tyres from earlier on from our race leader in a previous stint, or whereabouts that's come from. But meanwhile, in all that, Tobias Mardell making a nice move down the inside of turn 1 and 2 onto Logo, then the 420 car dropping back to P5.
Fastest lap of the race still with the 49 car of Erbrich, our race leader during the first stint, but currently lapping at 2:1.6, so showing again, that double pit stop really messing up their race. They have been leading quite comfortably, and just by choosing the wrong strategy, or rather, I wouldn't say choosing the wrong strategy. I don't think there's any big mistake in opting for the wets, as bad as the conditions were, but it wasn't really the right strategy either, especially with that double pit stop, and still down on P17, and having to play catch up very badly. But currently, 2:00 at the last time around, which I think is the fastest lap on track at the moment. So we might see them give us some on-track action anytime soon.
Yeah, and interesting thing, we've just had Mats Lindholm Andersen from the 49 car just posting in the chat. They had a pit stop issue, so perhaps it wasn't a strategy call. We were wondering whether or not it was a strategy call to do with going from the wets and then back to the slicks on like that. It'd be very interesting to hear from Lindholm Andersen which part of it was that that caused them to have to make a second pit stop, because it did remove them out of a very competitive position in this race. They've just taken a new fastest lap of a 2 minutes 0.0, so half a second clear of anyone else currently in the order. So the 49 car very much trying to recover that time, down 17th position at the moment, and about a good minute or so, I think, away from the race lead. And so they went for the wet tyres. But then the tyres didn't change. So they did go for what wasn't entirely the kind of optimal strategy call, as it turns out at the time, but unfortunately had a little bit of an issue in setting up the MFD. And anyone that has played ACC and has driven on here that knows that not only is that your worst nightmare, particularly if you are the driver racing as a part of a team, but unfortunately it's very easy to do. It's quite a fiddly system at times, particularly depending on what kind of controls you have on board your wheel or controller, if you're a controller player like the likes of Black Gold Saw, and it can be very fiddly to try to set up all of that. So unfortunately, it is easily done, and that's compromising the 49ers race severely there. As I just flicked over to a camera of the number 7 car who was recovering from an incident earlier on in the race. Oliar's up into P20 was sliding around through the S's at quite a rate of knots, trying to put some pressure onto Luca Ziga in the number 1 Honda, who may be about to be overtaken down in towards the first Degner. The number 7 car backs out of that one, so we'll have to try to set up a move elsewhere, although someone that didn't wait around any longer was our previous race leader, Vincent Erbrick, in the 49 car, diving down towards the inside of Zamora and getting themselves up into P16, so continuing their charge back through the field.
A very nice move there in the hairpin. Now 7 seconds to go until they stumble up on the back of the number 5 car of Hans-Peter. Other than that, the top running cars seemingly settling a bit, except for the fight for P3. Tobias Madl, who's absolutely flying at the moment. Now 8 tenths, 7 tenths, 6 tenths behind Farina, trying to take a look at the number 3 position. And the 420 car behind, not really letting off either. They have lost the 2 positions now on P5, but they're still sticking with them, trying to capitalize on any sort of mistake. Also the 55 car that was just overtaken by the 49 car, just the same. Yeah, just so 4 tenths behind. Into turn 1, too far behind to try to retake that position, but yeah, still trying their best, and so is Oliarts, who had that nasty incident at the start. They really have to recover. They started from 3rd position, currently down to P20, but maybe P19 in a minute. Still on the back of Lukas Ziege, currently through the S's, which is not the place where you really want to overtake. But if you're close enough, you can set up a nice overtake.
Yeah, you really do have to be firmly alongside the other car if you want to make that one stick, as he's got a great run going up in towards Dunlop Curve now. He tried to go down the inside in towards the first Degner before. This time's going to be around the outside, side by side with the number 1 Honda, who all the pair of them kind of leave each other so more room than they needed. The number 7 went wide, and the number 1 car took more curb than he probably needed to as well. So thankfully both cars making their way through there, and Oliar's gaining a position and going up into P19. Also to answer in the chat to Ryan, yes, I'm not sure exactly if we have any pad users in the current race that we have going on at the moment, but without a doubt, one of the most renowned names in AOR and also just in the ACC community, Black Gold Saw, is probably the fastest controller player that you will find on the sim, and is a AOR Tier 1 champion. He's multiple-time race winner, very, very highly competitive driver, continuing to use the pad as well. Very quick on a wheel. He actually did quite an interesting comparison between those two devices, and probably the only driver that I know on ACC that is able to switch between the two of them and maintain the sort of same level of pace. As a result of me being away from my rig at the moment, I've basically, when I do try to drive on a pad, I am about 4 seconds slower than I was on the steering wheel. So yeah, it's insane that he's able to be quite as interchangeable as he is between those devices. So it's definitely a unique talent that perhaps only a few drivers possess, or there may be those that dedicated themselves to learning how to drive an ACC just purely on a controller. I'm not sure about any other names, but I'm sure there are undoubtedly a few. And without a doubt, you can be very, very competitive, and a huge amount of respect for some of those drivers. But I think for the first time kind of in this race, we've hit a little bit of a calm point. There's sort of no gaps that are less than a second. Probably the one that's likely to come down. The quickest is that between Oliar's and Simon Beeg, who is Oliar's 6 tenths a second faster on the previous lap, and is looking to close down on the number 13 very, very shortly, and trying to continue their charge back through the field.
It's interesting that we have so many drivers who actually try to charge up the field after either mistakes early in the race, incidents early in the race, or that wet period. Also just an update on that. Weather now looking very sunny for at least the next 30 minutes, so it might just have been that one shower for this race. But maybe we will see some rain later on. Oliat's now getting very close to Simon Beek in front. I think still too far back on this lap. Half a second between them, but should have the straight line speed on the McLaren to make up that time quite fast, and does so indeed, especially with the slipstream now through 130R. Might just be enough for a small dive bomb into the Casio triangle. Not quite enough, but tries to think about it. But not very much on the back of Beek on the start-finish straight.
Oh, someone further down the order, Parika just made a move at 130R on Simon in the Porsche. And then now the number 7 car, the URL, going down the inside in towards turn 1 and making up the move on Simon Beek. So yeah, that BMW straight line speed paying dividends in the end and allowing the URL team to make up another position and get themselves up into 18th place. So good stuff there from Oliars as they continue their charge back through the field. Another gap that sort of keeps on going back and forth a little bit, but has come down just a tad over the last couple of laps, is between Marvel and Farina. We were talking about earlier that Tobias Marvel did seem to be pretty quick between this pair of cars, but the 991 car right now does seem to be the faster relative to Farina, and is closing in very nicely. Seem more confident on the brakes in towards the Casio triangle. I have to see what the lap times were last time around, but I think it's going to be a couple of tenths perhaps in favour of the 991 as they head towards the start-finish line for another time. It was a 201.6 for Farina, and yes indeed, Mardel 0.4 of a second faster than the BMW ahead. So whether that is Farina starting to struggle with some early tyre degradation, or is it going very, very wide on the exit of turn 2 there? That's allowed Mardel to really close up onto the back of the 201 car, the lead SPQ Racing Team car, the only BMW of that trio of the cars represented by SPQ today. But Mardel certainly giving him more of a sniff of an opportunity. Has dropped back to about half a second now, but doesn't like Farina just maybe making a couple of mistakes, struggling with a bit of pace at this point in the race, and allowing the 991 car to close. And there's a back marker that's not going to help Farina in all of that as well. So after having a gap over a second a lap or so ago, that has come down very, very quickly, and now already having to think about defending in the middle of the track towards the hairpin.
Yeah, that McMarker diving out of the way very eagerly, not trying to interfere with this battle for P3, obviously, but still has to think about their own race. It's always the plight of backmarkers in races like this, spoken as someone who often finds himself in the role of the backmarker. One of the reasons I opted to stop driving and just start talking about driving instead. Not really getting in anyone's way in the commentary booth. And nobody getting in the way of Farina either in front. Clear air for quite a while now, which is good news for Farina, who doesn't really need any interference in trying to defend from Mardel, who has a lot of speed, constantly inching closer, and then having to let off because the overtake just doesn't quite work out. But I don't think this battle will stop anytime soon.
One that's actually hotting up very, very quickly is that between Fideli and Christian Steinhauser. So Fideli gained 0.8 of a second on the Aston Martin last time around. So John Lacey Esports Academy car, the 127, looking very racy. It's 3 tenths behind at the moment. We'll be gaining in the slipstream on the run down towards turn 1 and 2, showing the nose, but I think is a little bit too far away to make up a position for time being. So there's a scrap going on there at the tail end of the top 10. I've also got, I think, Oscar Motin and Marcus Deck in the 728 Honda may have just swapped positions in the battle for 30th place. As we've also got side-by-side action between Jacob Tarasuk and Shimon Sutsuko in the Porsche on the entry towards 130R, the 760 car, getting very brave on the curb entry there, just about keeping it all together. That's not the first time that we've seen that car have a bit of a moment through 130R. They had a little wiggle through that part of the lap, I think, when they were on slick tyres in the wet conditions, but just about gathering it all up and making a position up in the process. But yeah, very close stuff there. And in actual fact, maybe another Aston Martin and maybe looking for a move there as Dutnitson towards Lubick on the entry towards 130. Big amounts of curve taken again. The BMW shoved onto the AstroTurf on the exit, but Dutnitson in the 920 car also making a move through there as well. So yeah, thankfully both Aston Martins managed to get through there cleanly, but certainly without certainly with a good amount of flirting with the edges of what they can get away with in terms of track limits and upsetting the balance of their cars.
Also towards the front, another battle starting to develop. That's that between the 42 car and the 420 car. It's Markus Eichhorn and Loke. Markus Eichhorn of the Leipert Esports team, who I think have joined us for the first time here, but very big name in iRacing, of course. And currently on the main straight, getting past Loke for P5. And in front of them, Tobias Madl also now still 2 tenths behind Farina. That battle is still going on. So it's the one between Steinhäuser and Fedele, which I think should be the closest one at the moment, but it's very hard to choose.
I think we may have one that's going to come down very quickly. Ulbrich recovering for the previous race leader, hunting all over the back of Hans-Peter, looking down towards the inside of turn 1, and the 49 car makes that one stick very, very nicely. So Vincent Ulbrich putting in some good lap times at the moment. I think he may have lost a little bit of time last time around behind Hans-Peter, and gets himself up into the top 15, and is only a couple of corners adrift of the next couple of cars of Glendy Dionysis and Milan Hack in the 48 Bentley. So by the looks of the pace differential that the 49 car is showing, it won't be too long until they are hunting around for 14th and 13th place, trying to work their way back up towards the front after that mistake in the first series of pit stops, to which we are probably about half an hour away from the next batch of scheduled pit stops, as Ulbrich getting a little bit held up actually at the hairpin of one of the other Audis in the Valentino Rossi livery, and just trying to see who was in that car. I can't quite see the race number on that one, but thankfully managing to make their way through there without too much issue in the end. But yeah, now our closest battle on circuit is back to this one between Fedele and Steinhauser. It's been going on for a couple of laps now. Not able to make a move up towards the inside 130. Does he think about a dive at the Casio triangle? He does. Late on the brakes there for the Audi. Clatters the curb on the entry there. Compromises the line of Christian. That's a long-standing name. Frequently made appearances in Tier 2 in the main sprint series, but now has to worry about Fedele all over his gearbox, and I think the Audi's going to have the straight line speed down in towards turn 1, and Antonio Fedele in the 127 car does make his way through then in towards 9th position for the Jean Lacey Esports Academy team.
Now 4.5 tenths behind the 203 car of Ricciardelli. One of the 3 SQR teams. The other one, the 202 of Diego Carlino, should be the next car to get to the back of Steinhäuser, but they still have to somewhat make up a few positions, starting in P4, down in P11 at the moment. They, I think, were also one of the cars changing onto wets, but even before that, through a small scrap with the 2 other cars of the team, lost some places early on in the race, and they, I'm pretty sure, will be eager to make up a few places, especially given that one of the other cars from the team is the 201 car of Farina, that's still under pressure from Tobias Madl and might fall out of the podium places pretty soon. But then again, we have been saying that for the past 20 minutes, and Mardel still is looking at the back of that car.
Yeah, so he definitely seems to, overall, I would say, seems to be the faster of two. It's possibly that, you know, when he does start to get too close, there will be a little bit of dirty air affecting these cars. It's quite clearly not as effective as we would see in something like Formula 1 or other more aero-dependent kind of series, but it does certainly have an effect, and it will be compromising Mardel, and also into areas of the circuit like Spoon, I would say. Spoon, the first Degner, 130R, corners where you have to have a lot of commitment on entry, turn 1 also, and you know, the lines around here are so precise, it's actually going to maybe lose out a little bit to some traffic that's unfortunately placed in the S's. There, oh dear, the Honda snatching across the nose, actually a Mardel there. I'm sure he might not be too pleased about that. That is the 656 car.
Mardel is so unpleased with that he, I think, just punted him off.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, yeah, Lieven Gowie in the 656, maybe driving a little bit unaware of those around him, and yeah, Mardel, perhaps not the, well, certainly not the cleanest of strategies, and not one that we would recommend, but yes, I think literally dispatching of the Honda in front of him, so yeah, Mardel now dropping 1.5 seconds, up to 2 actually, and a slight mistake at the head.
Looking at that replay, I'm pretty sure there will be another few seconds coming for him, because yeah, he just basically ran into the back of the backmarker. Of course, backmarker could have gone out of the way a bit more eagerly, but that doesn't give Mardel the right to punt him off, sadly. So I'm pretty sure the stewards will have a good look at that. And that's, of course, good news for Francesco Farina, who now has a bit of more breathing room in P3. 1.5 seconds now separating them. Sadly, also taking away quite a good fight from us. So let's take a look at Diego Carlino of the other SPQR team, who is now half a second behind Steinhäuser in front. So that battle might heat up quite soon. And so is the one between Milan Hack and Jarzabowski in front. 3/10 between them for P12.
Yeah, Dionysus isn't too far adrift in all of that. Maybe able to sneak his way into this battle if these two continue to fight. The 48 car in the Bentley, benefiting in all of the changing weather conditions. That car was in the hands of James Warren, who negotiated those very nicely and allowed them to climb up the order. But yeah, now about half second adrift of the Ferrari, but does seem to have a good bit of grunt underneath the bonnet of that Bentley. Very loud V8, of course, very lovely noise that thunders its way around the circuit, but unable to make up a position for the time being. Also did see that the gap between Carlino and Steinhauser closed down to about 3/10, but it's opened up immediately to a second. So I think maybe a little bit of a mistake from the 202 car, but Milan Hack definitely right now a driver that is in prime position to try to make an overtake very, very shortly, and then Dionysus just trying to bide his time in the background and seeing if he can find anything amongst all of that. Also should be noted that Vincent Erbrick in the 49 car, that team was leading the race in the early stages, and unfortunately had a bit of a complication during the first series of pit stop. You can now see that red Audi lurking in the background. It has been leaping very quickly, almost a second clear, if not more at times, than the cars in front. So Erbrick will be getting involved in this three-way tussle very, very shortly, I imagine, and will be looking to try and dispatch all 3 of these cars sooner rather than later, and make their way up to 12th place. And it's been a good recovery so far for that car. The cars in front, kind of after that point, there's not too many major gaps up until you work your way up towards the podium spots, where there is a solid 40 seconds between Leon Byrne and Francesco Farina. So, you know, considering that we are almost 2 hours in, and they've had to serve an extra pit stop, they're on a good they're on good track at the moment for a solid recovery drive. So yeah, Erbrick making up for that error earlier on, and seeing if they can get themselves into a competitive position once more.
But I don't think, just looking ahead, that's a sight he really wants to see. Of course, getting past any of those drivers isn't quite easy, even though we know Erbrick has a lot of speed, but getting past 3 of them who are in a fight for position themselves, it's seemingly an impossible task for the 49 car, who has to make up a lot of places. But at least Dionysus now dropping back somewhat from the other 2 cars, and could be easy pickings for Erbrick behind. All of them now going through the S's. It's starting to develop into quite a nice 4-way fight here.
Yeah, Parika also just made up a move on Dan Barnard in towards 130R, so that was a tiny overtake for him. But yeah, without a doubt, this train is going to start getting pretty busy very quickly. I mean, Vincent Erbrick last time round 1.5 seconds faster than Dionysus in front of him, so yeah, you'd have to imagine that he's going to be he's practically on the gearbox right now. I'm not sure if he's close enough for a dive, or he thinks about the inside quite late on there. I think he was wondering, maybe just trying to scare Dionysus a little bit, and trying to see if he can make up anything from all that. So it's quite a sort of fan favourite tactic of Jardier, is to sort of show the nose, but know that yourself that you're not committed to an overtake, but just trying to get the car in front to open up a gap on the inside, compromise their line, and then either sneak up the inside when that gap does open, or just trying to out-drag them out of the corner. It does work very effectively, but Erbrick carrying much more momentum through Spoon Curve there, and down the inside of Dionysus on the run towards 130R, who I think may not put up too much of a fight, and indeed lifts out the throttle and allows the 49 car to go up into 14th position, who sets their sights onto Milan Hack in the Bentley just up ahead. So continuing good progress in that Audi and making short work of these cars.
A very good run out of Spoon there, almost bump drafting, coming onto 130R. We talked about it a few times today, moves into 130R, always really brave, but no big problems for Erbrick there. Milan Hack now, trying to go around the outside of turn 1, almost bumps into Jazabowski there, and hangs back for now. Now coming onto the S's, only 1/10 separating them, but Milan Hack, just sticking back, not really trying any moves here, just trying to keep up and keep that gap as small as possible, coming into the Dunlop curve and of course the Degner curves, where he might have a better opportunity to try to get up into P12.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that Bentley it's a very torquey car, and it's got good low end grunt. It's a little bit limited for straight line speed at most circuits, just in terms of kind of its shape. It's a very bulky car, but yeah, it does have very good low end power. So if you can get it lined up alongside the Ferrari, perhaps on exit, that might be Milan Hack's best opportunity. Always there's a yellow flag out just in front of the pit lane. I do believe that is for, I think, there's a drive-through penalty for the 114 car as well. I think the 666 of Koaip in the Lexus, the Beesmax racing car that has had a bit of trouble at points already. Unfortunately, I think having a bit of an issue just out of the final corner, perhaps. But yeah, this three-way fight now hotting up very quickly as Vincent Erbrick has firmly got himself stuck into this battle, closing on the Bentley, who is getting a nice tow from Jarzabowski in front, but loses out in 130R, having to back out a bit, just trying to make sure that they hit that corner perfectly and see how they all fare through the chicane. It was a very nice run, actually, from Vincent Erbrick. I don't know if it'll be quite close enough in the slipstreams. We also have a yellow flag out for the 920. Oh, it rejoins completely into the 666, whose day goes from bad to worse. I'm not sure what happened with Duttonson. Robin Moe is off in the background as well, so something has happened through Dunlop Curve in all of that, because Robin Moe was off, the Aston Martin Duttonson, the 920 was off and rejoined, unfortunately, straight into the 666 of Koaip, who's still trying to get out of the way of some of those other cars. I'm not sure how all of that took place, but yeah, disastrous, a very confusing set of events there.
It looked like Duttonson and Moe just collided, and yeah, that rejoin, not the best of rejoins, and should be a costly repair for all three cars. And again, I'm not quite sure if the stewards might not just take a look at that. Unsafe rejoins one of the things they take very seriously, because you just tend to run the race of somebody who's not even involved in the crash. So we now have somebody who's not involved in this fight, trying to still make a mark on it, some back marker coming in the way of a three-way fight, but doing a very good job getting out of the way. Blocking Erbrick somewhat, who now had to abort that overtaking maneuver on Huck, who... and they collide!
Oh, and almost rejoining into the path, some of the other cars behind. Yeah, that was difficult to see from the camera angle I was looking at as to who may have been at fault there, but yeah, Milan Huck down the inside of Jarzembowski, and unfortunately, Jarzembowski managing to keep it on going fairly well, did lose a position to Erbrick, who I imagine breathed a sigh of relief to make it through there both cleanly and also saving a bit of time dispatching of those two cars. Unfortunately, has robbed us slightly of those potential overtakes, but yeah, what happened there?
I think we also had some sort of mistake from Tobias Madl, because he lost a position on Eichhorn, now down in P5.
Oh dear, so he has, yeah.
But I'm not quite sure what happened. Don't actually think it was a mistake, just slower on the straight line. On the start-finish straight. But a 2.5 on the last lap, so that's a very strange one. Might have been some small issue that we missed. So Tobias Madl, who was chasing after Farina for P3, now almost 5 seconds behind Farina, and even behind P4.
Unless that damage that he had with the back marker was, it didn't look. I mean, obviously the consequences were somewhat severe, but you know, the level of contact, I would have been surprised if all of his pace has dropped off entirely from that. It is possible though, because it would have been straight on the nose. As Steinhauser and Carlino, I think, may have just come together at the hairpin. Steinhauser going very slowly through the middle of the corner there, and Carlino allowing the 202 car to go up in towards the top 10, but I have a feeling there were some shenanigans that took place there.
Yeah, Carlino just trying to dive up the inside through the hairpin, but coming from very, very far behind. That was a move that even Daniel Ricciardo would say, oh, mate, come on. So yeah, Carlino with a very optimistic move, probably getting some damage as well there, and then slamming into Steinhäuser for a second time while trying to keep on. But up into P10 for the moment, and ending that fight that has been brewing for quite some time.
Yeah, so meanwhile we've got Hendricks and Holder going side by side through the exit of the final corner. I think Hendricks maybe getting the move done. I think we have a back marker just in front, if I'm not mistaken, is making it very awkward for them to negotiate as Hendricks goes very, very wide. That's going to allow Holder in the 169 car to sneak up the inside, now trying to go around the outside in towards the S, and contact between the pair of them. The Aston Martin sent into the gravel and rejoining onto circuit. It's going to be a little bit awkward for the cars coming up behind, and yeah, unfortunate stuff there. Very little margins left between those two cars, and the 169 coming off worse than all of that.
It's an update on the 991 car of Tobias Madl. They just went into the pits, so I think they have some sort of technical problem.
That would potentially explain it. Yeah, because there's nothing in terms of weather-wise. They have got running pretty quickly again, although it is Paul Shaban back in the car that started off the stint for the 991. So yeah, not sure if that was a technical issue, just looking to repair the damage, although looking at the front of that car, it looks more or less the same as when it was in the back of the Honda. So I think, yeah, unfortunately, you may be right there. That could explain the rapid drop-off in recent pace. Meanwhile, someone that's maintaining there is absolutely is capitalising on some of the other shenanigans that's been going on up and down the field. Vincent Erbrick in the 49 cars attempts to recover their way up the order as much as possible, is only about a second adrift now of Steinhauser, who of course lost a chunk of time last time around with the contacts with Carlino. Maybe a bit of damage on that car as well. The Honda, the 656 car, getting out of the way of Erbrick very nicely there. And yeah, the Race Anywhere SimSport car that I have just realised is actually appearing for me now as a Race Anywhere SimSport car. Was previously up at PCDC Motorsports for Super Bowl, so I'm not sure if that was something at my end that was being a bit weird, but yeah, Vincent Obrick now only a second adrift from Christian Steinhauser, and last time around was 2.2 seconds faster. So that 49 car looking to make their way up into the top 10 very shortly as they continue their charge through the field. Also got the likes of Jack Young that is slowly but surely reeling in the McLaren of Logue as what was that going on? I think that was a back marker that made a mistake through the exit of the first Degner, put a wheel on the gravel and compromised their line through there. Thankfully, I don't think disrupted anything too much. Although, checking back in on the battle for 10th place, Obrick has massively reeled in the Aston Martin of Christian Steinhauser, who now has a back marker to try and negotiate. It's a little bit awkward for the pair of them. Steinhauser defending the inside as they make their way past 728, the 666. I think that is in the background, also getting out of the way in all of that as well. And they're about to come across Holder in the 169 car as well, as Steinhauser furiously flashing his lights away. And the green Aston Martin trying to get out of the way on the inside now towards the outside line, and eventually retreats to the safety of the runoff and allows those two cars to continue their squabble. It should be noted that the Honda that's actually just behind that 169 is for position. Marcus Deck now right on the gearbox of the Aston Martin, trying to find a way through on the run up to 130R. Can't do anything just yet. In actual fact, has a very awkward line through there, and looks like the Aston Martin will be safe for now. As yellow flag again, I think, for 666. As Koaip has pulled over to the side of the road, gets back going again. That car's day goes from bad to worse, and recovering from something off at 130R there, as Vince Nurbrick has now made the move down the inside of Steinhauser. It did seem to be a matter of time there, and the 49 car making their way into 10th place.
Yeah, Steinhauser also possibly with some sort of damage from the incident with Carlino earlier. Already lost around 5 seconds on Carlino actually, so yeah, severely compromised in pace. 666 car, I think, going again. Yeah, a lot of issues for them this race. You could say they brought it up to themselves by choosing that number, but yeah, just a very unlucky race for them today. And with Erbrich getting past Steinhäuser, I think that's about it for close battles on track, except for the one that has been happening directly behind them. That's Marcus Deck of Team Hivemind Grumpy Old Men. That used to say something different. Trying to get past, that's James Oda from the other Craig D Racing car. Try hard to try harder. Trying to defend P28, while their sister car, the 420 car of Loke, currently in P5, and seems to have settled in that position for the time being. So Marcus Deck slowly gaining time, as he has been until they had to let these front runners past. 3 tenths behind, now coming into 130R. See Honda on the Aston Martin. And that might just be close enough to try something into the Casio triangle. Let's take a look. But very early on the brakes. Maybe trying to set up a move into turn 1.
Yeah, I think in actual fact the Aston Martin may have gone a little bit deep on the run towards the Casio triangle there, but not sure. Marcus Deck looked very quick in a straight line in that Honda, closing a huge amount down the back straight. I think, though, it's a little bit too far adrift to make anything happen towards turn 1, and in actual fact has quite the slide, and he's lost it entirely. It was going on for quite a while, and I think he got a bit too optimistic on the loud pedal of keeping it going, and unfortunately the 728 car going around, so that gives Holder in the 169 car a good amount of breathing space, and unfortunately sees Marcus Deck. I'm not sure if he's lost any positions in all that. He hasn't. He's got J Yans in the 16 car not too far adrift now, just a couple of corners back. But yeah, Marcus Deck then making a mistake and losing out as a result. Just having a look around to see what other battles may be on their way going. So Fideli has been catching up with the 203 car of Ricard in one of the SPQ Racing Team cars, so the battle for 7th may be on the shuffle fairly soon. Vince Nobrick, of course, who's been a big mover in recent times, is only a couple of seconds adrift from Carlino, who was lapping in a 202.9 last time around, so quite a slow lap time for one of the other SPQ Racing Team cars. I'm not sure if that was traffic, a mistake, or if that is just from the bit of damage that they will have been suffering ever since the contact with Steinhauser. And then we've also got potentially some closing in of a battle that we did see happening earlier on, of the likes of Dionysis, Jarzabowski and Milan Hack. Jarzabowski not lapping particularly competitive last time around, although suddenly a gap that's just massively closed down actually is Paul Shaban taking over from the 991 car that we think may have had a technical issue, is right onto the back of Jacob Tarasuk in the 760 car.
Yeah, the 991 car once again joining the host of cars who aren't really on track where they should be or where they expected to be. And yeah, I have to make up quite a lot of places after, I guess, some technical difficulties. Very, very close to the 760 now, and just going to the inside, coming into 130R. I think should be able to make that stick even before that corner. Doesn't quite, almost connects to the 760 car. That was a very close brush, but seems to be passed now.
Yeah, I think the 760 car has generally been one of the bravest I've seen through 130R. So maybe that was why they got quite as cozy as they did. But yeah, Paul Shaban then recovering a position, has been lapping very, very quickly, almost as fast. Well, sorry, it was actually faster than Vince Nobrick, but I believe may have gathered either. Well, hopefully for them, not a track limit warning, but did have some sort of track extension because the server didn't register it as the new fastest lap, because that honour still stays with the 49 car, who is lapping very quickly, 1.4 seconds faster than Carlino last time around, who goes a little bit wide through turn 14 of Spoon, and that may be all the invitation that the 49 car needs, as is hunting all over the back of that car as they have a drag race down towards 130R, and I have a feeling that Carlino is going to lift out the throttle, and he does allow Vince Nobrick in the 49 car to take the position, sweeps around the outside and goes up into P9, and now has 7 seconds to the next car on circuit in front of them. 7 seconds to the next car they'll be battling with position for, which will be Fideli, who is not too far away from Ricatelli at the moment, so that may slow those two down if they do start a battle, as Milan Hack has just made a position up on Dionysus, I believe, in towards the Casio Triangle, so the Bentley up in towards P13 makes a move on the 48 car, so them making their way up through order a little bit and setting off in sight of the 500 Ferrari and trying to see if they can close in towards the top 10 positions.
I think that was just a small mistake from Dionysus in the Casio Triangle. Still somewhat keeping behind Hack. Fideli also now getting very close to Ricitelli. I think Erbrick, on the other hand, with a small mistake in this lap, lost around 1 second on Fideli in the span of 2 corners. But just looking at the tendency in lap times, should be able to make up that gap in around 3 laps. Especially if this battle doesn't get resolved anytime soon. Fideli might lose some time trying to fight with Ricitelli for P7. And yeah, the 49 car now back into 1-digit numbers. Very much looking to make up some time after the pit stop issue earlier on. Fideli now close through, coming out of Spoon, but I think there's a back marker getting involved in front of him. And directly through 130R, that's a very, very difficult spot to let any front runners pass. That's the 77 car of Alfred Lubitsch getting in the way. should be diving out of the way now, does so in the Casio triangle, lets both cars past. But I think, yeah, that cost both of them quite some time, but funnily enough, cost Fideli, who didn't actually have to contend with the back marker, seemingly cost him more time than Ricciardelli in front. So the 203 car lives to breathe another day. And now still in front in the early stages of this lap. But Fideli gaining quite a lot of time there out of turn 1, around 3 tenths or 4 tenths he made up in that corner. Let's take a look if he can try to keep up through the S's and try to line up any sort of overtake into Degner 1 and 2.
Just might want to turn our attention to a battle that's a little bit further down with Paul Shaban and Dan Barnard. Shaban has been making his way through the field pretty swiftly over these last couple of laps. Has been showing some very good pace and diving down towards the inside actually. Well, Casio triangle, that overtake came a lot sooner than I was anticipating. And yeah, Shaban then making his way up into 21st position and has 11 seconds between himself and the next car. So we'll have a little bit of time to try to put in some solid laps and closing that gap as that team looks to recover. But yeah, I think back to our sort of next closest battle, arguably, is probably still this between Fideli and Ricciardelli. The Dinisis in the Ferrari hasn't sort of dropped back massively from Milan Hack, but I think overall is a little bit slower. So yeah, I think the ongoing scrap between the 127 and the 203 is probably where our eyes will want to be.
Not really where the cameras seems to want to be. Now, there we go. Coming into the Casio triangle, Fideli this time a bit closer than last time around, without any back markers interfering. But some back markers already in front of them, I think. No, that's actually the 99 car of Jack Young, who went into the pits. So the 99 car opening the next round of pit stops, which I almost forgot. Yeah, should be taking place pretty soon.
Oh, it was a mistake from Ricciardelli. That's allowed Fideli to get up the inside in towards turn 2, and Ricciardelli not leaving him any room on the outside of the S's. Fideli desperately trying to keep his nose in there. The two Italians squabbling very, very hard through that series of corners there, but Ricciardelli just about managing to stay out on top in all that for the time being, but made a small mistake through there, and that gave all the invitation that Fideli needed to really get involved in trying to make an overtake happen.
Yeah, but that gained time. Fideli not really using it all that much. Ricciardelli already gained a few tenths back. But now Fideli closer than before coming into the hairpin, and crucially coming into Spoon any minute now. Very close now into the hairpin. I think was almost thinking about trying an overtake down the inside. You could hear the brakes working very hard to avoid any collision there. So they're now going into Spoon. Fideli had his exit compromised by having to brake very hard. And that might just be the lifeline for Ricciardelli down the back straight now.
Yeah, and Spoon Curve is one of those corners where you really can gain or lose so much through there. I was watching a bit of Niels Nyark's very, very fast driver for BS Plus competition, of course. And yeah, he was saying that Spoon Curve is really one of those circuits that has a huge amount of impact. And particularly then when you're trying to make an overtake onto somebody, that all of that momentum that you carry through turn 14 and down in towards 130R. And although you do have a bit of a lift through 130R, unless you are, I think, I'm not sure if it's still the case. I do remember there was a time that in the Porsche, that if you ran maximum wing on the Porsche, you could actually stay flat out all the way from Spoon down towards the Casio triangle. But with the BOP changes of that car now being a bit more pacey in a straight line, I'm not entirely certain that that still applies. But yeah, it really does have a major impact in terms of whether or not you can get an overtake done. So Fideli still hunting around the back of Ricciardelli, but unable to do anything. Interestingly, Dionysis still lurking around Milan Hack, who really has not been able to escape and also hasn't really been able to make too much in the way of progress onto Jarzembowski in front of them. As another battle that may start to kind of hot up fairly soon is Jacob Tarasuk in the 760 car and Dan Barnard in the 177, as there's a 7/10 of a second difference between the last lap around, and as they go to hit time in being this time it is actually in favour of Dan Barnard, so a little bit back and forth between those drivers, but as I was saying, that the gaps previously with the likes of Milan Hack were stretching out earlier on, they have really closed up, in fact, over the last lap. Now both sets of cars within less than half a second of one another, so we could very much see a three-way tussle sparking back up for 11th position very shortly.
Yeah, the 48 and 28 car again involved with another car. Stop me if you have heard this one. Both cars are keeping it very interesting so far. And the Bentley now between those two Ferraris, but gaining pretty fast on the leading Ferrari. That's Jarzembowski, the 500 car. 1/10 now, but has to somewhat hang back through on the 130R. Excuse me. And the gap now rising again through the Casio triangle, as we have the 127 of Fideli going into the pits now. So some of the front runners starting to serve their pit stop. We have some sort of change here again, because the drivers that have pitted onto the wets previously, they have a bit longer on their stint to go than the ones who stuck it out on the dries and saved one pit stop. So it might be some time until we have a clear picture again of who is where, what the positions are like. The dry runners should be pitting anytime soon, including this fight. Both Jarzembowski, Hack and Dionysus are at about 1 hour and 6 minutes on their pit stint time at the moment. So in 1 or 2 laps they have to come into the pit lane. And let's see if they can sort out this fight before they do so.
Yes, we've we did have Fideli bringing the 127 car into the pits, so we'll be able to see how that would have played out with the battle that was going on with Ricatelli not too long ago. So we've now got Samuele Spoto in the 127 car, as they've served their pit stop, one of the first pitters amongst some of those groups at the front, as Milan Hack again very close to the back of Jarzembowski, and he might have set himself up quite a nice exit through Spoon, a little bit squirrely on the exit. The Bentley notoriously is quite a tricky one to get the power down in, as there's a yellow flag. As I think there's been quite a big incident actually, as several cars, the 760 of Tarasuk, Dan Barnard, and who else was that? That was Samuele Spoto, so the 127 car that has just served their pit stop, getting caught up in a major incident on the exit of Dunlop Curve. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I have a feeling that the two Astons may have come together, and unfortunately, as the innocent bystander, I think the John Lacey Esports Academy car, after just serving their pit stop, may have got caught up in all of that. So very, very unfortunate stuff there for them.
I'm actually not sure what happened. The replay is not really clear either. It looks like the 127 car was stationary on the side of the track for some other reason. The 760 car didn't really see them, just ran into the back of them, and while spinning also collected the 177 car. Very strange incident, and it might be a lot of damage for some of the cars. Meanwhile, our race leader, the number 3 car, coming into the pits as well. So yeah, very unfortunate incident for all 3 cars there.
Yeah, that is definitely a strange one. So yeah, unfortunate for each of them. Battles that are currently still raging on at the moment, though. Marcus Deck is not too far away from Matthias Nietzsche in the number 8 Porsche. I think are only 8. Only Porsche on our grid. But the three-way tussle between Milan Hack, Jarzembowski, and Glendy Dionysis is definitely. I think it's getting a little bit held up actually from a back marker is the Ferrari. It's making it a little bit troublesome for them to find a way through. The gaps have opened up a little bit for the time being, so it gives the Ferrari of Jarzbowski a bit of breathing space. McLaren now does head towards the AstroTurf, so they all get through there cleanly. It's going to compromise the exit a little bit of Milan Hack. Might allow Dionysus, who's flashing the lights, so McLaren, I think, trying to find somewhere to go and can't quite work out best to place their car, but they do eventually will make their way past the back marker, and all the gaps saying, oh, that's a big moment for Dionysus. I thought he was going to go into the gravel there, just about pulls up in time, and manages to keep the car pointing in a straight line as all three of the men dive into the pits, as I imagine that some of our other drivers will be doing the same. Everybody's starting to get to the end of their stint timer now, and we'll have to see how the order all shuffles about once they all complete their pit stops.
Interestingly enough, also somebody took out the pit board, so yeah, the pit board is gone, which means that some drivers might find it more difficult to activate the pit limiter in time. Also already some complaints about that in the Discord channel, as there ought to be. Yeah, the drivers now coming into the cars, of course, they can just reload the server when a pit board will appear again. That's one small trick there for you if you didn't know. But everyone on track at the moment has to do without them, at least for this time.
Yeah, we've also got a few different kind of battles hotting up. We've got William Carsten just gone around the outside of the 888 of Nins. Oh dear, oh, the 127's car goes from bad to worse. The stop go 30-second penalty. So that is disaster for the Jean Lacey Esports Academy cars. So very unfortunate stuff there for them. As meanwhile, other battles that we've got going on. We've got Sebastian Erdmann that is not too far adrift of Bart Raven, who is back in that car for the second time today. Dan Barnard is just a little bit adrift of John Papelli, who I believe has just taken over from Steinhauser, if I'm not mistaken with that. And Marcus Deck is continuing to sustain pressure on to the number 8 Porsche of Nietzsche just in front, but hasn't quite been able to make a move yet. Also, just interestingly enough, Marcus Eichhorn last time around was 1.2 seconds faster than Francesco Farina. So the 42 car has been slowly but surely kind of working their way into contention for what would be net P3. The 444 McLaren that is now in the hands of Tim Peachman has just done a pit stop not long ago, so they are slightly out of sequence with some of these other cars. But yeah, Farina then and Marcus Eichhorn, I do believe, are still a pit stop behind the likes of our race leader and Tim Peachman. And yeah, that is certainly a gap that has come down, and one that's also coming down very quickly is that actually of Tim Peachman and Riccatelli, who of course is on much older tyres in comparison to the 444, and the 444, generally speaking, has had a good pace advantage over that Audi, so maybe looking to make a move very swiftly.
Yeah, coming into the hairpin already, almost running into the back of the Audi in front, but should do away with them very quickly. Also, pretty sure that Riccatelli will go into the pits on this lap. Still has room to do one more, but
oh, a little bit of a bump on the exit of Spoon there. Peachman, yeah, perhaps getting a little bit impatient there, and yeah, gave a bit of a nudge to Riccatelli, which I'm sure he won't be too pleased about.
Eichhorn in front, also getting very close to Farina. This, of course, definitely a battle for position. Both of them have to go into the pits very soon, but Eichhorn might just want to do that while in front. Looking at the back of the BMW through the S-curves. Yes, I'm struggling to see through the sun setting on the track. But
I think we also just had a yellow flag for the 760 car again. I saw them escaping out of the gravel on the exit of the first Degner, and that car still seems to be rather injured. I'm not sure if that damage is carried over from the previous incident, but yeah, the 760 car continuing to have a difficult day.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few accidents actually over this stint. Whereas the first one was quite well behaved, I think. The second one, some drivers making mistakes, especially towards the end of the stint. We've seen quite a few crashes.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, you know, we will be heading towards kind of a nighttime phase in the tail end of the sort of second half of the race. So, yeah, if it's aspects of the circuit just catching the drivers out, maybe not placing their cars in exactly the right positions, that's all going to get twice as difficult, if not more, in those later stages of the race. Meanwhile, just I have noticed that Spoto has continued to remain out on circuit. Hasn't served the stop and go 30-second penalty just yet. So whether or not they're just trying to run around in clean air for a bit before they have to come in, or if there is some sort of live appeal going on, I'm not entirely certain. But yeah, the 127 car flashing the lights a little bit to, that will be the 49, is now back in the hands of Mats Lindholm Andersen and has just done a pit stop. I imagine the 49 car will probably be outpacing the 127 though, because they have been generally showing some fantastic pace despite that very unfortunate mistake in terms of strategy. They have been working their way back up through the order fairly nicely and are well inside of the top 10 now, with some drivers still yet to make their pit stop. They've got Attila Kode in the 420 car, that is the silver class leader, about 3.7 seconds up the road as another yellow flag comes out for the triple. Oh, we've got two. We've got one for the 888 on the exit of 130R that almost gets collected by a couple of cars. And then we've got the Lazy Badger in the 666 Lexus that unfortunately has had a spin over by turn 10. And I think thankfully everyone managing to avoid each car in both of those cases. But that first one with the 888 was particularly scary with the rejoin. I think the engine might have switched off and they were just desperately trying to get the car started again. But yeah, that could have got very nasty, but thankfully the Lexus managing to get out of the way just in time.
It's got a three-way fight here for P16. Shafka from URL, that's the number 7 car, trying to get past Felix Dressler from the number 5 car. Both of them have already pitted, and both of them trying to get past the 177 car of Bernard, who has yet to pit and should dive into the pit right now. Very likely he does so. But on the way out, somewhat blocks the number 7 car, which enables Felix Dressler to defend coming into turn 1. Let's see if he manages to do so. Yeah, Trafka not even trying any moves here. So number 5 car
someone
in front.
That might be able to, though, is Lindholm Andersen has immediately closed up onto the gap of the 203. So the pit stop that car now in the hands of Alessandro Zampieri and Mats Lindholm Andersen. Well, that was tyres up to temperature a little bit more as they come across a little bit of traffic. I think that might be the 888 Lexus just getting out of the way. Moving over to the left-hand side of the track, and will allow this pair of drivers through. But it'll be interesting to see what the pace is between these two cars. We've seen Lindholm Andersen. Actually, no, we haven't. This is the first time we've seen Lindholm Andersen in the car so far this race. Vincent Erbrick doing a double stint in the opening couple of hours, as that's a mistake there for Alessandro, who's gone wide on the exit of Spoon Curve, and Lindholm Andersen carrying the momentum down, definitely alongside on the run down towards 130R. Not sure if he's going to be alongside enough though to consider a move, and he does pull back towards the right hand side of the track. In actual fact, that's back out of the throttle as well. So sometimes it can be a lot more beneficial to kind of sacrifice that battle a lot sooner. And then so you don't lose out so much momentum on the entry towards 130R. But no doubt that 49 will be on the gearbox again pretty quickly. Someone else that's trying to make a move is John Papali in the Revolution Sim Racing car, the number 22, down in 15th at the moment, trying to put all sorts of pressure onto the Race Anywhere Sim Sports car, currently in the hands of Sebastian Erdmann. And the Aston Martin was looking pretty
That's a yellow flag for the 911.
Oh dear. So what's happened there? That's Paul Shaban through the S's.
Just
No
runs
idea.
into the back of, I'm not quite sure which car that was. I think that was a back marker. And has to pull to the side. Lost quite a lot of time there.
Oh dear, that's very unfortunate. Unfortunately, shenanigans with back markers is something that quite often plagues these drivers' experiences as some of our final drivers doing their pit stops. We've got Trafka that is very close to the back of Felix Dressler, another one of the BMWs, and Trafka generally, I would imagine, has the pace advantage. It's a little bit difficult actually to know where to look at the moment because we've got that battle hotting up, but we've also got this three-way fight as Kode in the last lap has been massively reeled in by Zampieri and Linham Anderson, who I think are going to be getting involved in this very, very quickly. We've got a back marker just in front, and
I think
yeah,
that's the 5-6 car that has actually been the one that somewhat blocked the 991 car. So now also in a way of this three-way fight,
dear.
and Anderson just almost Hacken-esque maneuver gets past into P8 for the time being, gets past Koda in the 420 car, but still on the back of Zampieri, so very, very impressive maneuver for 130R.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate positioning for the 420 car. Didn't really have anywhere to go. Ended up going very, very wide and losing out a lot of momentum in the process. Linham Anderson, though, now only a couple of tenths adrift of Zampieri, trying to see if he can dispatch two in just a couple of corners. But I think he might have to wait a little bit longer, although this back marker just up in front could cause a little bit of grief for Zampieri through the S's, potentially. I imagine the Audi will be getting a little bit frustrated with that. McLaren is definitely holding up the Audi at the moment. So we've got another back marker as well. That's going to get very tricky as they both have to slam on the brakes. Wonky line for the McLaren, and Zampieri. Well, Zampieri, I think, avoided contact. Unfortunately, Anderson, slightly blind of all that, hit the brakes a little bit too late, and then did go into the back of Zampieri. Small amount of contact. Zampieri not pleased with the McLaren and gives him a shoulder barge on the entry towards the first Egner. So McLaren not having a fun time in all of that. It's a very awkward position as a back marker sometimes get caught up in, but that's in all of that shenanigans, Alessandro has allowed himself to gap the Audi of the 49 car just a little bit, but with that pace difference, and Linham Anderson, I think, has over Zampieri, I'm sure that will close up very quickly.
Let's hope that Linham Anderson didn't walk away with too much damage from that crash. Not quite sure if we can get a look at the 49 bonnet to see if there's any sort of issue. But looks to be fine and still manages to stay at the back of Zampieri in front. And Zampieri pulling to the side, I think. No, that's actually just a back mark, I'm sorry. Two very similar looking cars there. And then Anderson still behind. Now coming into the Casio triangle. Zampieri covering the inside both times around, and Anderson now very close, but doesn't have quite as good of an exit as Zampieri in front. So let's see if he can use the slipstream coming into turn 1. Doesn't really get that much closer, has to be better on the brakes into turn 1, but doesn't even try it.
Yeah, someone else is really close to the back of someone. It's a battle we've already had going already is Trafka and Felix Dressler. They were almost, oh well, they were absolutely nose to tail on the run. Always there's a yellow flag out for 660. That's Thomas Wright, who I'm not sure if he's kept it out of the wall or not on the exit at 130R, but the Audi is definitely around. I can't see any noticeable damage on the front of that car, so he may have just about kept it out of the barrier there. It's difficult to tell, but a big moment there for that car.
Yeah, just managed to keep it outside of the wall. Trafka, meanwhile, now very close to Dressler. Is I don't know why, but the camera set on this track.
Sorry, Triple Eight's just gone around on the exit at first Egner, was actually trying to put pressure onto the 27 of Juris Hutschak, and unfortunately, yeah, lost the back end. Sabia losing the back end through the first Egner and going around, but thankfully not too much harm done.
That's still able to get going again. But there's another yellow flag, this time for the number 13, just stationary track side. That very much looks like a technical problem. Just outside of turn 1, very dangerous position to just stand around. Let's hope no one outbreaks themselves coming out of turn 1. Number 13 car now gets going again very slowly.
Yeah, that's very confusing. I'm not sure if he had a spin and he just got the car fired up again, or if he had a technical issue and just had to, you know, take the time to deal with that. So, yeah, very peculiar incident. One of a few peculiar incidents, actually, that we've had so far this race, but at least able to continue. Meanwhile, Mats Anderson putting pressure onto Zampieri again, showing the nose towards the inside at turn 1. As a yellow flag out for the AAA again, I do believe. So Chris Xavier off at the exit, the final corner is on the way again. Not sure what led them to that moment, but yeah, the Lexus proving to be a little bit tricky to handle around this circuit at the moment. It's a rather brutal car. It's got a whopping great V8 in it, very little in the way of aerodynamic grip, and it used to be absolutely incredibly dominant in the wet. It was extraordinary quick in the wet, but yeah, long gone are those days. As another Lexus having trouble is the 666 now. So on the exit at 130R, so both Lexus, I think we only have the 2, we do, unfortunately running into some difficulties, and the Lazy Badger swapping around and getting underway again on the exit at 130R. I don't think too much in the way of damage for either of those cars, hopefully, although it does seem to be driving a little bit wounded on the run towards start-finish straight, so not entirely sure, but yeah, difficult car seemingly to keep on the track at the moment.
Yeah, these series of accident crashes just somewhat keeps on even after the pit stop phase. Niels Crew, meanwhile, trying to get past Yannick Lautenschläger, that's for P25. Almost into the back of the BMW, coming out of the hairpin, but he manages to keep it out of that bumper in front.
Oh, sorry, the Zampieri just went deep going in towards the Casio Triangle. That's given the best run that Lenham Anderson has had in a long time. And he's very close up to the back of the Audi, and for the first time Zampieri feeling the need to defend that inside line. Mats Lenham Anderson going towards the outside in the 49 car towards turn 1. It's brave to do it there. He's not going to be given much room on the exit, and in actual fact I think the Italian has gone slightly wide on the exit of turn 2, which might give the momentum to the 49, and he does make the move. He was given very little room to work with. I'm not sure if that was deliberate really from Alessandro, because based on how deep he went in towards turn 2, I think he just misjudged the speed that he could carry. But the 49 car, after having to look at the gearbox of the 203 SPQ Racing Team car, does finally make his way through. As meanwhile, Giacomelli in the 202 SPQ Racing Team car has just been given a 15-second time penalty, and the Lazy Badger in the Lexus 666 has just had another moment, I believe, on the exit of the first Degner, trying to rejoin now safely. Does a good job of doing so, stays well out of the way of the other cars, and unfortunately the 666 having or continuing their tough time through there. But Lenham Anderson then up in towards what is that for him now, 7th place, which, considering that car has had to serve an extra pit stop, that is very impressive for the 49 car. So he's not even too far adrift of the P6 991 car as well. So promising recovery for the 49 as they look to try to make their way back towards the front of the grid.
Will be interesting to see the lap time of Lenham Anderson. I'm pretty sure he lost quite a lot of time trying to get past Zampieri for those few laps. But Zampieri doing a very good job defending until that last moment. 49 car, but just with too much pace in the end. Of course, they were the race leader, so they obviously have quite a lot of pace still. And yeah, back into P7, as you mentioned, very impressive recovery so far, and I am pretty sure it will keep going, being impressive. Currently half a second quicker than Paul Scheben in front, so that battle should develop quite soon.
Yeah, we've also got one that could develop pretty quickly. Is Niels Kuhl and Lautenschläger side by side towards 130. The 169 goes all over the curve. Lautenschläger goes very wide on the exit 130R, as that is the Lexus. I think that's the 666 again that is getting well out the way on the entry towards Casio Triangle, taking an unorthodox line back onto the circuit, crawling. Oh, I'm not sure if there's any technical issues that are going on with that car, making its way to the pits now. So losing a substantial amount of time as that battle with Kuhl and Lautenschläger continuing to go on. Oh, as Kuhl almost managed to go around the outside, gets the cutback through turn 2 and does find a way through on the BMW. There was, some muscling for position there, but the 169 does make the position stick and gets themselves up into 25th position and fourth in class.
It's contender for overtake of the day just there. Very impressive stuff from Niels Kuhl and the 169 car.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also just realising I was completely wrong. That is actually now for 5th in class, so not quite 4th. So I had several attempts of working out what position, eventually got there in the end. As another battle that we've got starting to hot up. Oh, it's Podens and Victor Bow in the number 13 car, currently being out-dragged by the Aston Martin, the Celtic Bromance 177, storming past on the outside of Victor then, well before turn 1, so the 177 car making up a position into 20th place, finding their way into the top 20. And another battle that we've got on the way is the that of 115 versus the 55 of Armando Ortenzi, looking to put some pressure on to Jean-Paul Ribeiro in the Aston Martin in front, who went a little bit wide through Spoon Curve now, and the Audi all over the gearbox on the run down towards 130R, firmly locked into the slipstream. Not sure if we're going to do anything just yet. If he thinks about a move towards the inside, he kind of half shows the nose. He does back out of it, maybe look for a move on the brakes in towards Casio Triangle. 55 leaves the door wide open. It wasn't quite that open. The 115 kind of outbraked himself, jumped completely over the inside of the chicane. Not sure if 55 will argue there. The 115 made that overtake kind of off track, but yeah, takes over the inside curb. Has a bit of door slamming on the exit for good measure, and does find his way in towards 17th position, but I'm not sure whether or not the Victoria's Secret Racing team unfortunately goes a little bit wide through turn 1 there. We'll have something to say about that.
Meanwhile, trying to take over the inside line is the same thing that Madsen and Anderson is trying on Porscheben in front, but thinks better of it into Spoon. Still hangs back for now, very close to the back of him now, coming onto the back straight. 210 separating them. The Audi on the BMW now goes to the inside and gets past even before 140R, I am pretty sure. Yeah, slots in right in front of Porscheben. The 49 team now already back up into 6th position on their way back towards the top of the field. But now 13 seconds to go until they hit the back of Merman, who is lapping pretty fast. But no one lapping quite as fast as Lennon Anderson, who set a 2:03 last time around. And let's just take a look at this lap time. That was a 2:01.3, but of course with the overtake as well. So very fast lap times from the 49 car.
Yeah, also Tim Peachman actually in 2nd place at 444 did a 2:06, which is a fairly impressive lap time from the McLaren, so finding some good pace at this stage of the race. I was just doing some quick maths on the fly that there's about 96 seconds between the 49 and our race leader in the number 3 car, and when Linham Anderson has been out of traffic, he has been, generally speaking, gaining something in the order between a half a second to 3/4 of a second over Francesco Fidelibus. And, you know, with that sort of improvement, we saw Vince Nurbrick was very quick in his stints as well. It's definitely not out of the question that with 5 hours left to go, when we're looking at lap times that are more or less spot on 2 minutes at a time, you know, we've got at least what we've got about 165 laps left to go. You know, if you're gaining just something like half a second, 3/4 of a second at a time, a 90-second gap is not out of the question of being, you know, of being at grasp of being recoverable. So, you know, it's definitely not over for those guys. Meanwhile, I'm not sure if we just had a swapping a position between Giacomelli and Attila Kode, those two quite close on circuit. I think Kode may have just lost a bit of time there.
Giacomelli just diving down the inside of the 420 car through Spoon and getting past pretty cleanly and already pulling ahead quite considerably. Now on the chase onto the 203 car, who in turn looking very closely at the back of Paul Scheben to try to get into P7. So the 991 car seems to be somewhat affected by the damage from that earlier accident. Already under pressure again after just losing a place to Lyndon Anderson on the last lap.
Yeah, they do certainly seem to be struggling at the moment in that BMW. The Audi of Sampieri really hunting around the back of that car. As meanwhile, very close on circuit as well is Trafka and John Papali. Barely barely any space between them whatsoever. Trafka in front of Papali. I think it may have been that Trafka made a move at Casio Triangle and is just trying to hold on to it towards turn 1 and 2, which will be fairly easily done as Papali has just made a bit of a mistake there on the entry to turn 2. Very easily done, particularly if you haven't been running in the slipstream for a while and you have that overspeed. If you choose to brake at your previous braking point, then chances are that you're going to run into a little bit of shenanigans with pulling that one up. Also, we were wondering what sort of pace of Lennon Anderson would be once he was unleashed from the back of Zampieri, and it's definitely very solid. 2:05 again, which again I must point out was only 0.02 of a second faster than Tim Peachman. So Tim Peachman in the 444 McLaren showing some very strong pace at this point in the race, and the pair of them just lapping a few tenths faster than the number 3 car, currently leading the way after having inherited the lead from the 49 after their slight pit stop error, as Zampieri again trying to put all sorts of pressure onto Paul Scheben. Shows his nose on the run down towards 130R, but unable to do anything just yet. The BMW straight line speed just enough to keep them out of trouble for the time being, although a little bit late on the brakes potentially for Paul Scheben. Looked like a nicer, neater exit for Zampieri, but I'm not sure he's going to be close enough to make anything happen down towards turn 1. I think he will in fact be a little bit too far adrift. Meanwhile, someone that is struggling, it seems, at this point in the race, the 420 car of Kode, as we get another 15-second penalty in for the 48 car. That's the Bentley of Sebastian Erdmann. And yeah, Attila Kode, the 420 car that was lapping very, very competitively early on, just seems to be dropping a bit down the order. 2:03.6 last time around, lost 1.4 seconds, 1.86 seconds, excuse me, to the Ferrari of Adam Beal, who's desperately trying to find a way through that sequence of corners in the S's. And yeah, Kode, not sure if he's got a problem of sorts, but that car does not seem to be going as quick as it was earlier. And crucially, when their competitor in the silver class, Bart Raven, is lapping almost 2 seconds faster than them, that is something for that team to be a little bit concerned about at this stage of the race.
Over the 28 car just had a yellow flag somewhere. Not quite sure what happened, didn't seem to lose too much time. But yeah, other than that, as you mentioned, lapping 2 seconds quicker than the 420 car right now. In fact, I'm pretty sure the 420 car, the slowest car on track at the moment, up until down to P28. So definitely some sort of issue for Kode there.
Yeah, absolutely. As Zampieri again closing up to the back of Scheben on that back straight, but unable to make anything stick for the time being. Very close running between those two. What about De Beal? Does he fare any better trying to hunt down Kode on the run towards 130R? The McLaren isn't going to defend it, but equally De Beal doesn't want to go for it. I suspect we could see a move. Oh dear, that got very close to the gearbox on the McLaren. Ferrari taking a little bit of evasive action And then on the braking towards Casio Triangle, spots his braking point very nicely and finds his way up into P10. So no class change of position for the 420 car, but Bart Raven, the next silver class competitor, very much closing in on those on the current silver class leader. So yeah, the 420 car, the next that stint has got quite a way to go, and although last time around Bart Raven wasn't particularly competitive as he has a little bit of a squirrely entry towards turn 2, I'd say that overall it does look like the Ferrari is suddenly gaining on the silver class lead that we've had leading for quite a while now. So I suspect we may have a change of lead before the end of this next stint.
Sampieri still chasing after Scheben, but a bit of trouble with the back marker there. That's the... not quite sure what part of that was actually. Getting in the way somewhat and blocking Sampieri, who's now lost around half a second. Niels Kuhl meanwhile side by side, and there was a crash with Thomas Reich, the 660 car, into the gravel. Niels Kuhl gaining a position, not quite sure if there's anyone to blame between those. And even behind, I think the first time we talk about the Mercedes, that's the 189 car getting past the 27 McLaren into P34. So quick series of overtakes for you there, and the 203 car again very close to Scheben in front, excuse me, managed to make up the time that they lost by the interference of a back marker. Now coming into onto the start-finish straight, but I think too far back to try and move into turn 1. Has a quick look, but decides against it.
Zampieri certainly hunting around at the moment, unable to make anything stick, as also we've got Matthias Nietzsche in the number 8 Porsche going well, pretty competitively as it stands at the moment, just behind Victor Bow. Last time around gaining about 1.5 seconds, actually more so than that. Maths is hard. I was too busy working out the gaps earlier. It was 2.1 seconds, as meanwhile yellow flag for Shooter 80 and 728 car. I think just a bit of a wide moment at 130R, but doesn't look to be too dramatic. So I think maybe a mistake of sorts for Victor Bow maybe last time around, but it's allowed Matthias to close in a bit. Another battle heating up is that between the number 7 and number 48 of Trafka and Sebastian Erdmann, where it does seem like Trafka has a significant pace advantage over the Bentley. It goes clattering over the curbs in towards the first and second deck, and it goes wide on the exit. There might be the invitation that number 7 needs. Going to be squeezed towards the inside on the run up towards the hairpin, not leaving much room between the pair of them. Race Anywhere SimSport car does have a 15-second penalty, so it's a little bit redundant perhaps defending like this, but certainly making Trafka work for it. And the number 7 car will have to try to find another opportunity elsewhere, but you have to imagine with the general pace that the number 7 car we know has had earlier on in the race, and equally has just been showing generally as almost sneakers on up the inside. We have a yellow flag out for Michael Mantle in the 340 McLaren that almost makes contact with the 202 Audi of Giacomelli in towards the Casio Triangle, and I think has had, unfortunately, a big incident through 130R and has given a bit of a facial reconstruction to that McLaren once again, as we've now got a yellow flag out for the number 13 of Victor Bow. That car's pulled off at turn 1 again. Gets going, but seemingly issues for that car, and of course that's allowed Matthias Nietzsche to make his way past, but yeah, something does seem to be a little bit awry for that number 7 car. Excuse me, not number 7, the number 13.
Yeah, just try to take a look at what happened there. Couldn't really spot any issues. The number 7 car that you actually mean, that is currently still chasing after Erdmann in front. Again, very close through the S's. 1/10 between them. trying still to get that position, in a very frustrating position of trying to get past someone who they gonna get past during the pit stop phase anyway due to the 50-second penalty. Now side by side, coming into Degner 2, slots in back behind again, making their way towards the hairpin, probably going to take a look down the inside, but Erdmann covering the inside line very well, so no chance for Trafka this time around. Let's take a look into Spoon, if they can try anything, but until they arrive there, we're just going to take a quick look at Zampieri, who's now 2/10 behind Paul Scheben again. So Scheben fending very well, as we indeed see Trafka trying to move down the inside into Spoon, but can't quite manage it this time around. We have another yellow flag down the back. I think that was actually Niklas Kuhl, if I'm not mistaken.
I did see a brief yellow for 728 of Shooter 80, but I think it may have just been a little bit of a small track excursion. I don't think there was anything too major going on in all of that. Someone who's really trying to find anywhere on the circuit to make a move is Trafka. He was weaving behind the Bentley, just trying to find a piece of tarmac to place his car and make a move stick. Oh, as Thomas Allendorf has just lost a position to Niels Kuhl on the run up towards Spoon curve there. So the 169 Aston Martin making their way through. As just checking in on sort of some of our other battles. Zampieri's dropped back a little bit from Paul Scheben. A battle that may be about to take place is that between Dor and Samuele Spoto, 729 versus 127. Now, the 127 is a little bit out of position here because of the various events that have happened to that car so far during the race. I think it was a stop and go 30. I think there might have been, I'm not sure, maybe a bit of incident with some damage as well. And the 729 Honda is looking like they're at quite similar pace, but hasn't been able to make anything stick just yet. And down towards 130R, won't be able to outdrag the Audi, but the Audi going very, very wide before Casio Triangle. Door staying behind for the time being. And we'll have to see if he can set up something somewhere else on the circuit. Pretty tidy exit from the pair of them, as desperately trying to keep an eye on three close battles we have going on at the same time. But I think Door, is he close enough to make anything stick towards turn one again? Having the door shut on him. There's a pun in there somewhere. Shut on him in towards that corner. Yeah, and the 127 just about managing to hold on to that. Zampieri had no luck down in towards turn one either. Trafka, though, may be the one out of this trio to finally make a move happen around the outside in towards 130R. Forced Erdmann to defend there. I think had to get a little bit out of the throttle, and so did Trafka there through the exit of 130R, because they almost came together there, avoiding action from the number 7 car, but has got a pretty strong exit, one of the strongest he's had in a while, and is now firmly locked onto the gearbox of the Bentley. They've got John Papali not too far adrift of these two, but Trafka now trying to dive towards the inside for turn one, and there's a tiny touch between the pair of them there. The Bentley sent wide, but does manage to keep it all pointing in the right direction in the end, and eventually the URL car, number 7, does get up into P13. I imagine he feels in the cockpit he's had to work a lot harder for that than he feels like he would have needed to. The 15-second time penalty of Erdmann clearly sort of taking him out of this battle already, but does have a right to battle for the position on track. But yeah, in the end, Trafka finally making his way through, as the gap between Door and Spoto has opened up. So I'm not quite sure whether or not, or how about that position end up swapping around. So our next closest battle is that between Zampieri and Scheben, but that has opened up to a second, I think, whilst they've been making their way through some traffic.
Sebastian Erdmann will be a bit more annoyed about that small punt, because it now enabled the 2 car of John Papale behind to come somewhat close. 8/10 now, the gap between them. So even though he would have lost that position anyway, I have a word or two to say about the contact between the two cars if he stands to lose another position because of it. But Papale falling back a bit now out of Spoon. And with that, I think for the first time since ages, no close battle going on right now.
Yeah, so surprisingly empty at this point in time. One that I imagine is not going to be long until it's actually both much closer and also a very poignant battle is that between Bart Raven and Attila Kodate. 2.6 seconds faster was Bart Raven on that last lap in the number 28 Ferrari. So Attila Kodate, I think maybe as a combination of, that was probably a bit of traffic perhaps, and I think also a lack of confidence in their cars. We've got a yellow flag out for the 63. That is Olin that is stranded on the exit of part of the S's. I think it's up through Dunlop Curve. The Mercedes, see, twitching the steering wheel, trying to find a moment to get going again, as does eventually decide to choose for reverse. Actually, if I got entirely the wrong part of the circuit there, I do. It's actually right before the Casio Triangle. I was looking at the mini-map, and those two parts close together visually. But, yeah, completely misunderstood where that Mercedes was. So, unfortunately, Olin having some sort of moments there in that. But, yeah, without a doubt, the battle for the silver class lead, I think, is going to be coming down very, very quickly because, yeah, Kodate does not seem to have the same level of pace as teammates of Nuttall and, it escapes me, the second driver that we had sitting in that car. So, yeah, Bart Raven looking much more competitive as it stands, and looking to close down that gap. As is Alessandro Zampieri, who's back to within half a second of Paul Shaver.
I'd be very interested to hear later on from the 420 team if there's any issue in the car. They should be coming around in the next 20 seconds for another lap. I am eager to see this lap time because Koda does seem to struggle a lot, especially judging by that last lap time. It's already 4 tenths lost again on Bart Raven, so yeah, that battle should develop very soon, very quickly. So 2.3.5 last time around for Koda. That's around 1 second slower than Bart Raven in the 28 car. Zampieri, meanwhile, not really able to make up that much time either. Gap stays at around half a second. Has been looking very close to Scheben earlier on, but Scheben seemingly getting back into the groove after losing a few places at the start of the stint. But interestingly enough, on a completely different stint time as well, 1 hour and 4 minutes already in the car, so has to come into the pits in this lap, next lap, roundabout. So yeah, 5 minutes at the very latest should be coming in for the pit stop.
Yeah, so we'll see some shuffling around then.
Jon Papale meanwhile collects Erdmann, sorry to interrupt you, trying to get round, I think that was Stigma 1.
Oh dear, and Felix Dressler just went straight into the side of Erdmann there. That was stranded. Most cars have managed to avoid him. Unfortunately, Drexler was not one of them, and that's a real shame. I didn't see the initial contacts on my side, but that was very unfortunate for Drexler in the background, or Dressler, sorry.
Yeah, and still with the yellow flag still going very slowly. I think lost 3 places there. Zampieri got past Scheben meanwhile. I think Scheben made some sort of mistake. But yeah, very big contact. Not really anything that Erdmann could have done there. Stayed on the brakes, but just an unlucky position to be stationary on track, just coming out of Digna 2.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate. As just also a bit of an update on the silver class battle. It does look like Kodate has sort of got back to his normal pace. It's still though, although last time around I think actually some traffic may have made it quite a marginal difference between himself and Bart Raven, but that gap now has come down to almost about a second. It's just over a second between those two drivers. So there could well be a fight for the silver class lead taking place very shortly, as it does seem like the Ferrari of Bart Raven is in a much more competitive spot, gained actually a significant amount through the S's, and now that gap has come down to about 3/4 of a second, so found half a second in the opening part of the lap alone, and I think very much is going to be in contention for taking the silver class lead for the first time this race, away from Attila Kode very, very shortly. Attila doesn't quite, I haven't seen an instant where that car has been in the wars at all, as meanwhile drive-through penalty for number 13, so I think that's our perhaps our second, it's either our second or third team that's unfortunate, I think, got a penalty as a result of track limits. So unfortunate stuff there for the number 13, and we know is suffering, oh my goodness, suffering with some issues already, as meanwhile Felix Dressler has just been overtaken, not entirely, by Jean-Paul Ribeiro. He gets very messy, makes a mistake, oh no, and Jean-Paul gets he went completely off the circuit, clearly lost time. Unfortunately the game has registered it as gaining, and now through making a mistake whilst trying to overtake the very battered and bruised BMW of Dressler, has got the 55 team a penalty, and Dressler of course very wounded at the moment, and that's allowing the Honda of, actual fact I think that car's a lap either in front or down onto on Dresser. The Honda's just gone past, but a very unfortunate incident there for Ribeiro, who has now got Ryan Cooper for company as well, as they look to try to make a move potential. This is getting awkward with Dressler in front of all of this as well on the run down towards 130R, as Ribeiro goes down the inside, so does the Honda, as Victor Bo comes in to serve his drive-through penalty, and both cars then making their way past Dressler in that last lap, as a little bit of a wiggle for Ryan Cooper on the exit, although the Aston Martin 55 then does dive into the pits, as does Dressler behind. So I imagine we will start to see a few more cars making their pit stops around now, as you previously mentioned.
Yeah, for Dressler, that's probably simply to repair damages, which they have quite a lot. You could see the bonnet wobbling around like it was a rave. But for the 55 car, I'm not quite sure. That might just have been a scheduled stop, although that is quite soon. They have had only 15 minutes on their stint timer.
Also, there has been that change of lead for the silver class. Unfortunately, did seem to miss it. I think that may have taken place on the last lap. Bart Raven then in the 28 Ferrari has managed to get that car up into the lead of the silver class. So both these cars are part of Cracked Racing, so not sure that the battle would have been too intense, although we did see SBQ Racing obviously having those cars going very hardly fought battle between those drivers earlier on, but Bart Raven making his way through in towards the lead of silver class, and yeah, we'll be looking to try to extend that margin as much as possible before the next series of pit stops and driver swaps end up taking place. And that was the car that won the silver class and finished well within the top 10 last time at Paul Ricard. So clearly strong pace and consistency in that Ferrari, and now looking to try to break away a little bit and open up a gap for the other drivers in the 28 team. I'm not sure if I've missed that one or forgotten that it was already there, but I see a 15-second penalty for Giacomelli in the 202 car, so that's unfortunate stuff there from him. Tobias Marvel has just got into the car from Paul Shaban for the 991, so they've just done a pit stop. I think our closest battle on circuit right now is Kode versus Trafka.
Trafka running into the back of Kode there. I think that was out of Degner too.
Yeah, very much hung up on the gearbox of that McLaren. Kode clearly struggling with a bit of pace as Manuel Rutter further down the order has got a drive-through penalty. Kode's gone wide at the hairpin. I think we'll still have a battle perhaps on the run up the hill, Oh, I do not like that curb. That's particularly something like the McLaren. There's a very scary bump on that inside apex on the run up through towards Spoon Curve, and if you get a little bit too greedy with that inside line, particularly in something like the McLaren, it really can unsettle the car. Thankfully, no major harm done for Kode, but losing out another position in the process.
Further down the field, we have Uros Hutsiak from Celtic Bromance trying to take a look at the AAA car, but I think falling back a bit now, getting overtaken by some front runners there, so that takes away quite a bit of pace he had and prematurely ends that fight. So I'll just take a look around the grid. We have a yellow flag for the 189. Very brief yellow flag. Let's try to take a look at the replay and see what happened there. Might have just been going off, yeah, out of 130 air, a bit too wide, keeps it out of the wall, takes a trip through the gravel, but nothing major. Probably just a few seconds lost in that incident. So the
thankfully not too significant.
Number 5 car coming in for the drive-through, so disaster for them after that incident. Had to go into the pits to repair damages. Drive-throughs directly afterwards, as we have another yellow flag for Beeswax Lawnmower, staying true to name, taking a trip through the grass. Yeah, just lost the back end, just about kept it out of the wall, and then while trying to rejoin, had another spin around. Beautifully done. And staying out of everyone's way. And we have another yellow flag. That's the number 13 car that was just stationary in track.
Returning to garage that time around. So, yeah, Victor Bowe. We've seen that car pull over to the side a few times already, but yeah, this time it seems to be a little bit more of a critical issue, unfortunately, for the number 13. Quite sure what happened to them, but it seems like they may have had some sort of technical issue throughout, as I've got a yellow flag popping up for the number 25 now. That's Timothy Glendinning in the Ferrari. Not quite sure what happened for them, down in 39th position at the moment. Yeah, so yeah, disappointment for the 13 there. It seems to have had a bit of a troublesome race. And yeah, returning to garage, that is not a good sign for them.
Yeah, it's always sucks to see these sort of technical issues, and I think they also left the server just a few moments ago. I can't find them anymore on my timing sheet. So it looks like those technical issues have indeed been critical issues, and they have now had to retire from the race, sadly. Celtic Bromance, meanwhile, losing a few places after yellow flag. Now very close to the back of the AAA car and also under pressure from the 114 car. I think there was a small contact on the 114 car, spins around, just losing the back end out of 130R. Don't think that was due to any contact, but ending that fight with the 27 car. 27 car, however, still free to chase after the AAA car. 3 tenths behind, coming out of the final corner. And that is the 201 car in front of them, so no back marker that will cause any issues in this fight. And also towards the front of the field we have a yellow flag for Bart Raven. I was just about to say under pressure from Trafka, but lost the car somewhere and also lost P10. So I think that was coming into Spoon. Yeah, just took the aforementioned curb, somewhat lost the car, and then Trafka said, "Thank you very much," dove down the inside, took P10. So the number 7 car now, after that incident early on in the race, at the very start, I think that even before turn 1, back into the top 10 and free to chase after their starting position of P3. with 4 hours still to go, I think very much on the table. So we have another yellow flag, this time for the 7 to 9 car. Quite a lot of yellow flags these last few minutes. Yeah, just losing it. I think that was into the hairpin. I'm not quite sure. And having to take the long way around while rejoining the track.
Yeah, some unfortunate stuff there for Butterhaven in all of that. Crucially, has held on to the silver class lead, so in terms of kind of the net effect of all of that, so nothing too detrimental, as a sort of little flag coming out there for Moment in the 99 car in 5th place, but I don't think anything too significant going on there. Similar sort of story for Allendorf down in 27th, so I think it's all being a bit reactive on my side of things, but yeah, things seem to calm down a little bit. I think next battle that could be on the way could be that of very quickly actually. Tobias Martel is right onto the gearbox of Armando Ortenzi. The 901 very much the faster of two, almost 3 seconds faster last time around. The Audi defending the inside on the run up towards the first Egner. BMW almost pushing him along through the apex and going a little bit wide on the exit. There might be all the invitation that the BMW needs on the run up towards the hairpin. Audi defending the inside. 901 sent towards the outside, trying to get good drive on the exit. The Audi though, oh dear, that was tricky between those two. As a drive-through penalty, unfortunately, for the 48 car in the hands of James Warren. So that's the Bentley that's our next victim of track limits. But the BMW of Martel looking very competitive at the moment relative to the Audi, and diving towards the inside, almost contact between the pair of them through Spoon Curve. And I think 115 completely had to open up the steering then, and that's allowed Martel in that 991 car to draw alongside. To be a drag race between them and the Audi, a little bit of door-to-door, touching on the way to 130R, but I think Martel will have position done, and he will go through up into 14th place. So in the end, a fairly straightforward move, but several kind of elements to that on the run towards that. And the battle that I was actually thinking was going to be our next one of interest was that between Niels Cool and Shooter 80 for 25th position, because last time around Niels Cool was 1.5 seconds faster than Shooter 80 in front. Not sure what it'll be this time around, but it looks like I think he's taken a chunk of time again. Another 0.3 for Niels Cool then, as James Warren, just emerging from the pit lane a little bit further upfield, has now actually got Manuel Rutter for company. So a few battles still kind of going back and forth and emerging for us.
Yeah, but 48 Bentley, we have seen quite a lot of so far, again finding themselves in another battle. Also now after the pit stops with the added drawback of cold tires, trying to defend from Manuel Rutter, who will have some level of anger driving with him in the car after those incident-riddled last few laps, trying to make up a few positions. If we have another crash further down the field, that's quite a lot of cars involved.
I think it was 17 of Reed Aldred and Thomas Wright in the 660. It looked like was going quite slowly, but yeah, Reed Aldred definitely. Oh, actually, no, they're on two different places on the circuit. I think Thomas Wright may have had a small incident, but Reed Aldred definitely was the car that was having major issues at the tail end of the circuit. I think on the exit Casio Triangle. So I think two separate instances going on. Again, the Suzuka layout. Not that there's any favours in terms of those being in close proximity to each other, but yeah, not sure what happened there.
I certainly can't find it on the replay anymore.
Meanwhile, in all of that, oh, so we've got a yellow flag out now for the 99. So the 99 car, what's happened there? That was Jack Young. Not sure if there was an incident down in towards turn 1 or 2 potentially, but definitely something seemed to be going on. Has got a bit of traffic in front at the moment. Meanwhile, also James Warren and Manuel Rutter have swapped around since the 48 car emerged from the pit lane to serve their drive-through. So James Warren now in the Bentley, making a little bit of a mistake in turn 2 as well, now losing some time to them, to the number 5 car. And Neil's Cool now down the inside of Shooter 80 as there's a Honda that was stricken in the way, trying to get out of the way as well. And the 169 car capitalising on all of that chaos and managing to go around the outside in towards the S's and getting the move done on Shooter 80, who hasn't given up on the position just yet, but definitely is still lost out there, but is very much in the background trying to recover.
James Warren hasn't given up a position neither, just tried to dive down the inside of Grutter coming out of, I think that was Stegner too, but yeah, struck one tire too much into the gravel, lost a bit of time, which he has already made back up again, coming into the hairpin, now on their way to Spoon, trying to retake that position. The 48 car should be a bit further ahead, judging by what we have seen over the last few laps, but of course they just came out of the pits and facing about the same issue that the number 7 car has been facing, where they are on a different pit strategy, pitting much earlier than the other drivers, and the price for that is that they have to get past quite a few cars, that they are faster. They have to get quite past a few cars. Mental fatigue also setting in the commentary box.
It's well, you know, that is the case with these long endurance races, both for the drivers trying to maintain their concentration, and yes, and like you say, us in the comms box trying to work out what is going on with some of this action. Looking at the gaps on the circuit at the moment, still the closest that we have is that between James Warren and Manuel Rutter, but I think that gap will slowly open out, much like Niels Cool and Shooter 80. Meanwhile, at the tail end of the grid, we've got the 666 car in the hand of Jack Game in the Beeswax Racing car, the Lexus that has had a few issues at various points. Now closing in on the Mercedes of Olin in the 63 car, so gained a few tenths on the last lap, so may be able to make something happen shortly, although did lose considerably out on the exit of the hairpin there, so that gap going back and forth somewhat. Also did just want to check in on sort of looking at the lap times at the pointier end of the grid. So last time around, initially this might be subject slightly to traffic and things like that, but Mats Lindholm Anderson did a 201.6. Our race leader did a 201 dead. So Lindholm Anderson, I'm not sure, maybe losing a bit of pace now, is only 6 seconds now behind Marcel Julian Kalb in the 42 Aston Martin, currently sitting in 4th place. So definitely still reeling in the Aston at quite a rate of knots. So we'll be looking to try to challenge for the top 4 in the near future. And the gap to the race leader, when I last measured it, was about 96 seconds. Doing some quick maths, it is now sitting up at about 98 based on my calculations. So I think maybe the pace switching back towards the race leader a bit. So running out of time for the number 49 car to have a hope of sort of working its way towards the front of the pack. Still could very much be in contention for a podium, there's no doubt about that. The pace is certainly on target, I think, for that in the next 4.5 hours, but getting all the way back to the race leading positions, that's a huge amount of curb actually, through a Casio triangle, maybe a bit more tricky, as the 666, or 656 actually, excuse me, of Marcel Sinoltra has just had a moment through the S's, has got going again just in front of the 169 car, but the Honda having a little bit of a wonky moment through there by the looks of it.
Jack Young very close to the back of Coda now, 1/10 between them, as Jack Game in the 666 car has to abort the fight to get out of last position. Lost quite a bit of time there, and I think that was Coda going wide in the spoon. Just missing the braking point going wide, and that promotes Jack Young into P11. So the 420 losing another position.
Yeah, it's also actually now coming under pressure from a back mark as one of the Mercedes. That is the who is that in that car? It's not too many Mercedes we have on the grid. That is Smoggy in the 189 car. So it's Smoggy, another one of the cracked racing teams making their way past Kode, who really has seemingly struggled for pace in this stint and is now already 11 seconds behind Bart Raven. So bearing in mind, in this stint alone, I think Bart Raven must have recovered almost 20 seconds to get to where Kode was on track, and now has gapped him by a further 11 seconds. So Bart Raven really working wonders for the 28 team, for them trying to make it a back-to-back victory in the Endurance Series for the first couple of rounds. And yeah, and certainly has put themselves in a strong position to try to do so at the moment. Actual fact, sorry, I've done. Oh no, there's the gaps. I'm getting confused between the various deltas. As I see another yellow flag for who was that just popped up on the screen? It was a car that ended in 7. I have a feeling it might have been Reed Aldred. I'm not sure. There was a brief yellow flag for Matthias Nietzsche as well through turns 1 and 2, but seemingly I couldn't see anything too dramatic going on in all of that. And our next closest fight on circuit ends up becoming between Manuel Rutter and Yannick Lautenschläger in the 2 M4s, with Rutter taking out 1.4 seconds on the last lap from Lautenschläger in the 77 car, so maybe able to make a move fairly shortly.
Both cars on different strategies, so Lautenschläger in front should have to pit any minute now. Also two sister cars, both the Hela Gewürzketchup Racing Team cars, so wouldn't be too surprised if Lautenschläger lets Rutter past any second now to not hold him up anymore, because James Brown behind, excuse me, very close again to Rutter, so Rutter will have a lot, will want Lautenschläger to get out of the way anytime soon, or rather dive into the pits anytime soon. Which he should probably have to do on this lap, actually.
Yeah, I also just saw a brief yellow flag out for Christopher Tanguy in the number 1 car, but I didn't see anything too dramatic there. But Manuel Rutter sustaining pressure onto Lautenschläger in that BMW, and the number 5 car trying to line up a better exit. Did seem, and Lautenschläger straight into the pit, so that will bring it close to that little squabble. But it has allowed James Warren to close up in all of that, who's only now 3/10 adrift of the M4 in front. As you think about a move down towards turn 1, he's not quite close enough. As there's always a big slide for James Warren in the 48 car. He just about keeps under control through turn 2, but holds on to that for the time being, as Remco Langdijk in the 55 has just emerged out of the pits, not too far adrift behind them. But generally speaking, other than this battle between Warren, who goes wide again, puts a wheel out on the grass and loses a bit of momentum, that as it stands at the moment, that we don't have too much in the way of any close fights, which is not sort of the feeling and the sight that we've had during all of this race, because it has nicely for us in this endurance been a little bit in terms of non-stop action. But right now, James Warren and Manuel Rutter closest on circuit, with our next closest battle being between Tanguy and Paluk in the 760 car.
Yeah, it's pretty much a similar story that we have often enough seen in these endurance races. Towards the middle of the race, things tend to calm down a bit. You have first signs of mental fatigue, of course, of drivers just getting a bit exhausted, not wanting to throw away the race after you've already invested half a Saturday into the race, but also trying to get somewhat settled. Meanwhile, we can see the race leaders going into the pits, both the 444 car and the number 3 car of Pichman and Fida Libos, currently getting a new set of tires and a new batch of fuel. James Brown, meanwhile, still trying to follow after Rutter, but lost quite some time. Rutter now with some back markers in front to contend.
Ooh,
We have a yellow flag for the number 17.
Also a yellow flag for Bart Raven in 28. So I'm not sure if those two aspects were linked. They were at similar parts of the circuit, so it could be something going on with those. So I'm not sure what happened to our silver class leader, who has lost some time in all of that. We've also got an overtake attempting to happen down towards turn 1 and 2 between Thomas Allendorf and Richard Benz in the 777. The 777 holding off the M4 just behind for the time being. So I think that's been a battle that's emerged in all of the other shuffles. But yeah, that was a difficult moment for the 28 car. Not sure what happened to them. Oh no, there's a stop-go 30-second penalty for the 420. So the car that was the silver class leader for so long has sped into the pit lane, unfortunately, and their chances of getting a silver class win were already looking a little bit troublesome, with Kode falling down the order a bit. And I imagine that Bart Raven will be breathing a sigh of relief because he seemed to have a moment not too long ago, but that really helped cement their position for maintaining the silver class lead, with the 420 car making that mistake. So very difficult part of the race for them to face. It's Logan, that car, at this point in time, and yeah, he'll have to serve that fairly swiftly, of course. Bart Raven coming into the pits for their scheduled pit stop as we kind of make our way into this next flurry of stops. But yeah, that is a significant point in the race for the silver class lead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's probably just another driver getting caught out by the missing pit board, actually. For people not aware with sim racing, it might seem somewhat silly, but just that one board saying this is the pit not being there anymore is often enough to just catch up drivers, and they just miss the line where you have to enable the pit speed limiter, and it's a much bigger issue than you would think.
Yeah, it is unfortunately very very difficult to judge sometimes. Unfortunately, Kode, yeah, he'll probably be feeling a little bit disappointed with the pace that he had in that stint, losing time out and losing the silver class lead, and unfortunately then making that mistake on the entry to the pit lane as well was yeah, that is certainly a bit of a nail in the coffin for that one. They've into the 28 car, they've now got Liam Gilo in the now silver class lead, and we'll have to see where Logue in the 420 car comes out in all of that, because yeah, he's going to plummet down the order, I imagine, with that currently sitting in P15, P2 in class. I'm not sure if they'll lose any further positions in class amongst all of that, as I think Dor in the 729 just made a position over Daniel van der Linde, although it could have been just some cars emerging out of the pits area. I wasn't 100% certain, but yeah, Logan the 420 serving his stop and go 30-second penalty, and difficult times there for that car. As meanwhile, a gap that's been coming down fairly consistently over the last few laps is Mats Lindholm Andersen. He's taken another half a second out in the last lap from the 42 of Marcel Julien Kalb in the number 42 car, and is very close up to the back of trying to challenge for 4th place, which again, this was our race leader by a decent margin as well. Had an issue with the pit stop phase and then dropped down the order with an extra pit stop, but has soldiered their way up the order to now be challenging around for 4th place outright. So,
but I
very good recovery from them.
They will have to pit this lap, so probably not going to challenge, and does indeed dive into the pits.
Yep, so Lindholm Andersen then looks like got that nicely spotted, and down to the speed limit, as coming in just behind was one of the other BMWs, actually a couple in the background as well, as the 201 BMW that was sitting in P3 in this race, I do believe, behind the 444, has come into the pits and is serving their stop. Obviously more drivers working their way through the driver swap phase as we make our way through the next batch of pit stops. As on track, it's not too much in the way of battles going on at the moment. Closest one perhaps is Casper Bjork and Joris Hutchak in the 2 McLarens. Oh dear, as Casper Bjork, I say that, has driven off into Narnia briefly on the exit of turn 2 and has lost a chunk of time there to Joris, so that's allowed that gap to open up. And yes, means that we don't have too much in the way of battles going on circuit, but I'm sure that once everyone completes all their pit stops, that things will shuffle around and see how they all emerge and all of that.
So the pit stop phase just about over. Still 1 or 2 drivers, especially P3 and P4. That's Marcel Julian Kalb and Alessandro Sampieri still having to pit from P3 and P4. Other than that, most drivers made their way into the pits, and with no close battle on track at the moment, I think this is a good place to end this part of the stream and send you all over to part 2 of the stream. The link has already been posted in the chat, where we will carry on for the second half of the race. I say we. Shinsen will take over from me, and also Christian Romero will show up soon and take over from John. And yeah, thank you, John, for being here with me, especially working through illness, the absolute trooper that he is.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I've certainly enjoyed doing these opening few hours. As just briefly, we've got a yellow flag out for the 25 car of Glendinning. I'm not sure what happened there, unfortunately. The Ferrari just recuperating things on the exit of the first Egner. But yeah, it's been an eventful opening few hours of the stream. I've thoroughly enjoyed doing it. The voice just about held up, but yeah, it's I think it's graining and wearing out about as quickly as some of these drivers' tyres at the moment. So yeah, so it's a good time to dip out. But yeah, big thanks to you as well, Tetra, for also doing the hosting duties on side of things. Fantastic lead comms for the opening half of this race.
Thank you very much. So yeah, to everyone still listening, still viewing in the chat, you can now make your way over to part 2 of the stream, and we will see each other